Mic check 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Welcome back to the White Brain Trust. This is open chat episode number 12. Please hit the like button as you come in and share the video if possible. I got my co-facilitator with me, Mr. Man of Tomorrow, MOT. What's going on?
Oh, what's going on, man? I think this is a particularly important topic of discussion because there's a lot of people who don't understand the end goal of this social conditioning that we have, and such a progress that we have here.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I hope we can dig into it tonight. Maybe open up another dimension on the whole entire subject itself. Let me acknowledge the people in the chat too. Mega Montana, what's going on? Oh, DZ, what's going on? Good evening to you. David Smith, what's up? CB the third, what's going on? Andy, what's going on? Brother Truth Be Told, what's up? Wheezy, what's going on? Yeah, man. So let's start off the show with saying that happy birthday to Man of Tomorrow. He is 41 today. So happy birthday to Man of Tomorrow.
All right, thanks, man.
No problem. Make sure y'all in the chat, man. Y'all say happy birthday to Man of Tomorrow as well. You see, what else is going on? Just a little bit of house cleaning. We did have a good hangout yesterday for Space and Technology. So if you've missed that, make sure you get up on that as well. I see people coming in, so make sure you hit the like button as you come in so we can get started. Before we get started, I want to make sure I send out the invites to everybody. Well, so give me a few seconds and then we'll get started.
You know what's amazing about this subject? I haven't heard anybody in the psychological realm even discuss this at all on no level.
So the only two people I've heard actually discuss it ad nauseum and in depth is Dr. T.S.on Johnson, which is I was hoping I can get him on tonight, but too short of a notice. He has a whole entire series dedicated to the gynarchy. He's been releasing on his channel, and he also teaches that in the university. And Dr. Tommy Curry, who produced a book called The Man Not, that goes over a lot of this stuff as well.
Oh, nice. Because I'm a Facebook friend of T.S.on Johnson, and his stuff's pretty solid that he posts on his page. Yep. And all the articles that he talks about and speaks on.
Yeah, one of these days we gotta actually get both of them onto the panel, and then we can just go really in depth because on the academic level, that's a whole different sort of perspective that they can speak from. So. What's this brother's name?
Hey, what's good, everybody?
Oh, what's going on, Gabe?
Yeah, not too much. Not too much. Work.
Yeah, I just came back from IBM myself.
Oh, cool.
I meet up there on security and security in the cloud. So.
Okay.
Oh, nice, man.
Yeah, definitely some really interesting stuff they got coming out. Stuff that we can actually get up on. I took some notes,
Yeah,
but I don't know if it's gonna be applicable.
yeah.
Yeah, more applicable
I
for
was gonna
work.
say yeah, because they just recently acquired. Well, not recently, but not too long ago, acquired Red Hat Linux.
Right.
I'm sure that has some incorporation. But anyway,
Oh, you probably won't see a lot of that for a few years.
yeah.
Maybe a year at best. You won't see a lot of that integration happen because
Hmm.
IBM had its own portfolio before Red Hat even came into
Right.
the picture, right? So there's a lot of integration that has to happen first, and it's probably gonna be a lot of layoffs that happens. So
I was just about to say, you think it's just to take away like market shares or market presence, so that they can,
from
yeah,
from
from Red Hat, take
no
it and take that
Red.
revenue stream and throw it into their own.
Well, I mean that's always the deal, but they have to compete with Amazon and Microsoft, right? So
Hmm.
Amazon is the tends 2/3 of the market. IBM only had less than 10% of the market.
What particular market are you
Cloud.
speaking of?
The,
Oh,
the,
okay,
the
you're speaking
focus is
specifically
cloud.
from a cloud. Gotcha.
Yeah, Red Hat is a powerhouse in terms of open source cloud, right? So
Hmm.
they already have a market for themselves. And the discussion we had tonight was that IBM lost to a book company, right? You're losing market share to a
Nah.
book company, right? So that's the perspective that they look at it from a technology standpoint, from an IT standpoint. That's what they're saying. So how do you compete? How do you compete? Your
Book
portfolio is not
company.
your portfolio is not as deep, and your cycle of development is too long in comparison to AWS, right? AWS spins up products every single week, whereas
Yeah.
IBM might do it every other quarter or maybe every other leap year. That's
I mean
really
that's that's disrespectful. I mean, disrespectful.
oh
A
yeah,
book company. Hey.
that's the way how they look at it, and they're trying to compete. They got to stay relevant,
Yeah.
or else they'll die.
Indeed.
Hey, Complex Design, what's going on, bro?
Mike V, what's good, G? What's going on, everyone?
Hey,
Chilling,
man.
man.
How's it going?
Man, tomorrow, Gabe.
Hey.
Yeah, it's MOT's birthday, man.
That's right. Happy 41st, brother.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, man.
All right, thanks, man.
All right. Sent out the links. We got 40 people watching, only 26 likes. Can we please get the likes up if you're not going to participate in the chat?
Yeah.
I see 49 likes. Am I looking at something different?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
You say what?
it says, actually, it says 50 likes now.
Okay, my
At the snap of Mike V's finger.
Yeah.
yeah. So let me preface this as to what's going on. We got one dislike just now. Wow.
Whoa.
Shots fired.
Slow down. Slow
Be
down,
careful
guys.
what you ask for.
Chill, guys. Whoa.
Let me preface this as to why we're having this discussion. A lot of the time when we try and have a more intellectual discussion in the manosphere, it always gets derailed by outside forces. So on this channel, what we try to do is we try to have a very in-depth conversation about things that are actually happening on the ground and in real time. So this is something that we've been sitting on for quite some time. We initially did not have a whole lot of bandwidth to actually have these conversations because we were so focused on a lot of the tech stuff and a lot of STEM stuff. So now we get to have a real conversation. Initially, we had a conversation with Dr. T.S.on Johnson. Shout out to Dr. T.S.on Johnson. He talks about the gynocracy at the academic level as well as on his YouTube channel. So make sure you look that up, Dr. T.S.on Johnson on YouTube. If anybody in the chat who has a wrench can actually link up his channel and share it in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. he goes into a lot of the impact and the origins as to how this came about. But for us tonight, with having this at the civil level and then on the ground level, and what happens when black males are raised in these sort of environments, they tend to get they tend not to have any choice, so they're kind of burdened by their own environment and the situation. So, oh, Foxfire is in the chat. What's going on, bro? You need a if you need a let me actually bring
Yes,
you up.
send them the link.
Yeah, if you need a link, man, if you have time to get on, please get on. And a lot of the times, these guys, these brothers, are raised in these environments and they don't have any way of getting out of it until they are actually 18. And a lot of times when I hear them get out, the first way they get out of it is either by going to play ball or they join the military. So a lot of times, the anger and the frustration that you hear from a lot of black males in movies such as based on a true story, which is Antoine Fisher,
Hmm.
who's a victim of this sort of environment, and this doesn't get talked about a lot. I was I was watching a show here in Boston. We called um it used to be called say brother um Basic Black, and one of the professors, a Haitian professor from Tufts University, I can't remember his name right now. He brought this point up, and he got kind of shouted out or drowned out by the rest of the participants on the panel, who are black women. That this is not that's not an important topic to really talk about. I wish I could find the video because it happened some years ago, but he basically tried to bring this up and he got shouted out. So a lot of times when we try to have these conversations, um, it doesn't really go anywhere because there is outside influence and as well as internal disdain for this sort of topic and subject. So I think we can pass it around the panel and get anybody else's opinion on as to what's your take on this sort of subject.
Man, I don't know. Maybe a lot of these themes that we're discussing here as it relates to this has started to kind of maybe rekindle or like, spark like a renewed interest in like things like fraternal orders and stuff like that. These would be more of like highly structured um, groups and organizations that are strictly headed by men. That's what hence the fraternal part of the term, fraternal order. And there has to be stated goals and agendas. I mean, this is literally like all other like fraternal orders of every sort. They have this structure, and it's composed of a group of men, and then there are those who come into that order. I mean, there's other orders that are around, but I'm talking specifically to like a fraternal order, and these things have like, they have their rites, their rituals, and all the things that preserve a certain edict,
Mhm.
that's put forth like a stated objective, and this is an objective that should basically transcend all of our lifetimes. So that's what would give life to this entity that brings men through this order as young men, right? Brings them through and it molds them and structures them in such a way where by being a part of this fraternal order, they're kind of like initiated into uh, higher ways of being and thinking. So I think reestablishing these types of organizations would be key. They would go a long way in reversing a lot of what's done to particularly like a lot of young men who just grew up without a dad in the home. Uh-oh, everybody muted?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I didn't know if you guys thought I was done or whatever. It got kind of quiet for a minute. But well, I just had a quick thought. We do this with sports. We already do this with sports. So, in terms of like the type of things that we discuss here, we would be talking about the creation of like men's leagues, business leagues, stuff like that. It would be the same type of approach. I'm sorry, MOT. Go ahead.
That's cool. No, thanks for having me on. When I think about the particular subject, they don't need thinking men in their capacity because they operate as proxies for the system at large to help them conspire to like keep men out of it. Like I think there's only like 3 men that they need. They need the actual bed bugs who will sleep with them, who will give them the children who they don't want to raise. You have the actual guy who is the non-sexual cheerleader, you know, the simp. And then you have the two types of quote-unquote pro-blacks that keep this stuff going. There's one type of pro-black that wants to absolve all women of their past actions, but expect for men to build them. Then you have the other type of pro-black is the one who promises other people's future to said person in this scenario. So if you look at it, all the men in this scenario are very weak. None of them are independent thinking, and all of them operate for the express intent purpose of keeping this system going. Like there are no independent men that are built to build in a matriarch. Men are quote unquote built or manufactured to help them maintain the matriarch. They don't really have a need or use unless they can play ball and go make a bunch of quick money. And we've seen that here. I mean, I wish it wasn't the case, but the social pathology is out there. This is a failed system, and it does not bode well for men who are raised in this type of system. Now, given the women who are raised in this type of system, they automatically always are going to outpace the men in this system because women are exalted in this system at the expense of diminishing men. That's just the way this system is and how it works. Now, how they were able to get away with this for so long was to tell you that if only you had a predetermined amount of sex within this particular framework, you would be okay with everything that's happening or going on. Now, that criticism doesn't really hold up, but that is what they've been using thus far to shame men into not talking about the actual problems that are in this specific system because it affects men overall. But the men who climb to the top of this specific system see nothing wrong with the system because they quote unquote benefit from it. So as for thinking men, period, this is not a system that we need to support at all. We actually need to separate and extricate ourselves from this sort of system. So that's all I got to say on the subject for now.
Sauchi, you have anything you want to add to this?
Gabe, Salchi, Paul?
Yeah, good evening, guys. I think what Complex and MOT stated is definitely correct. To paraphrase an old saying, that the Catholic Church used to say, give me your kid from birth to 7, and I'll have him for life. And basically that's what you're seeing, amongst blacks in this country. They've been indoctrinated, from the general public and then from various subcultures. And then it's just been passed down, perpetuated throughout, generations. So, the solutions to combat that, in my opinion, would be, in a sense, going back, and I've stated this before, to what has worked in the past, period. And now that we have the internet, I mean, we can use any method that's any of the best methods that are used from any country instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. You know, we can create our own subculture that would be able to compete in the future via STEM, finance, and business. Now that would have to start from, the older guys, realistically, because obviously the young boys can't do that. They need direction from us per se. And yes, the general, culture will be against us and the subcultures as well because they've been trained. So that's the battle I think that needs to be talked about. Personally, I I'm excited. Really, I mean, I think it's good. Because they think that we're weak. That's good, and all that's done is just made us stronger, made us sharper, made us faster, made us stronger, and we could pass that down. But as Complex was saying, we would need to do that, you know, as a team, and there would have to be standards. I think that's the only way it'll work. That's the only way, and that's my intro.
All right, Paul Bryant.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
First off, MOT, happy birthday, bro. Congrats.
All right, thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, if we look at American black culture, right, a lot of black men who were raised up as boys, they were raised by single mothers or single women. They were raised up in a household that was female dominant. So, despite all the everything that they say, a woman cannot raise a boy into a man. She can rear that boy up to 18, but only a man can create another man. Same way only a woman can create another woman. So when you see a lot of these men who are emotional, they're confrontational, they don't know how to conflict resolve, they argue, they jump from topic to topic to topic. You know, those are all those are all feminine traits. So they tend to have negative effects and negative consequences. So it may sound very corny, but until Black American society puts the emphasis back on a consistent, strong family structure, I really don't see much changing. So the the mindset and the focus and the emphasis in these households that are single parent, single mother households, education is not stressed. Success is not stressed. Setting standards is not stressed. So I'm not one to bash or attack women, and that's not what I'm doing. What I am saying is when once you destroyed a family structure, this group of people called American Black people have basically done nothing. So short of that changing, you will not see much success. To correlate along with that, when you look at the best and the brightest, for the most part, the best and the brightest, those who succeed the most, they tend to come from a two-parent household. They tend to come from a male dominant household, and they tend to have standards. And look how many of them who are successful educationally and financially, who did not grow up inside of what's typically accepted as American black culture and society. They then get shunned. So this is a multi-layer problem or a multi-layer issue that really needs to be looked at very in depth from new angles, because everything and anything that has been done to look at it thus far, clearly it's not working. So what I'm saying is, it's time to think your way through. It's time to look at these issues from different angles.
Yeah. Hey, can you guys hear me?
We got you,
Hello?
Mark.
Yeah,
Go
we can
ahead.
hear you.
All right, cool.
I hear you fine.
Oh, okay, no, I was just gonna say, I think I might have a little bit of a different perspective than some of the other gentlemen on the panel. It might be a little, I guess, cold or cruel at times, some might think, but I have a bit of a mentality of get on the bus or get left. Um, Kind of what I think is that we've seen that many times, many individuals within our community want to embrace ratchetness. They want to embrace those things which are not productive to producing a successful, prosperous, growing society. And I just think that the bus is passing them by, the train is passing them by. And as things progress within the world, I mean, time will only can be the best teacher for individuals who have made bad decisions continually. Um, and I think that if individuals are going in a direction of something positive as it concerns a positive future for the Black community, I think that's the bus to get on. And I don't think that if you get on the bus that you're alone. But there are other successful, there are other well-meaning and prosperous and solid African Americans, men and women, that will join you on the journey to better, the journey to better. And I think that if individuals just want to embrace the wrong, bus bus is gonna leave them, and it's hard to it's kind of hard to say, but hey, I mean, forget them. Hey,
So my question to you, Gabe, is
yeah,
have you ever seen the movie uh, Antoine Fisher?
I think I remember seeing it. Yeah,
So that's based on a true story, and he's the byproduct of what we're talking about. So what happens when uh, guys like him end up in that situation? It is so impactful. What you're saying would fly right over his head. In fact, it would actually trigger him. So we have to be mindful when we talk to some of these, we talk about some of these people that we use white gloves because with I think black males have one of the highest suicide rates in the country. Um, per maybe non white males.
I'm sorry. What do
So
you? Yeah, I'm sorry. What are you implying?
what I'm implying is that we have to look at this. We have to take a scalpel to this, right? So we can't say get on the bus and get left behind.
Well,
That's not as productive to say to somebody who's in that situation. If we said something like that, if something like that was said to, let's say, Antoine Fisher, he could have
yeah.
probably put a bullet in his head. So we have to be careful that when we say things like that, we don't alienate the victim because we're talking about the victim here.
Well, I don't see it in the same way. Like we can not agree to the point, but I still stand by what I'm saying. Like I know individuals, like you can say that there are individuals kind of with mental, I mean, like fragile mental mentalities, right? That can be pushed over the edge. But at the same time, I think that as we also know of many adults that just desire to roll in the filth of unproductive, like they just want to keep doing the wrong things. So
But
my message is there, and my opinion stands. Yeah.
okay, so I want to I was hoping that Foxfire would get on the panel. I don't see him on here yet, but he might be busy doing his shift. Let me see if I can share my screen. BGS had Black Gnostic Speaks. Shout out to Black Gnostic. He posted an article from the Economic Policy Institute that talked about black males are the most disenfranchised group in this country, bar none, against a sortie of other American citizens, even more so than women. They're some of the lowest literacy rates, high unemployment rates, especially in places like Baltimore, St. Louis, Chicago. Um, a lot of the Midwestern states, especially places like Mississippi, a lot of unemployed black males. So what's happening here is that these black males are being raised to be cannon fodder. At least from my perspective, they're being raised to be cannon fodder for another objective. And I'm wondering if I can pass that question around to maybe MOT. What is the cannon fodder that these boys are being raised for?
I mean, they're being raised as the next generation of entertainment and cheerleaders and procreators of their power. That's all in serve a purpose in this setup. Men are not created to service the head of the family. Men are created in this specific framework to assist the woman in helping her stay at the head and the top of the household. That is the social pathology of what's going on within this culture. And if you look at the unreformed criminal, there's so many different facets that keep this specific type of power in place. A person does not know that they're in the wrong type of thing until they're separated from it and they try to be an independent person outside of the system. Like if they try to compete in a non-matriarchal environment, they quickly learn that they will not be able to survive. And that essentially they was raised to be a 19-year-old, 11-year-old who's so far behind in productivity and critical thinking amongst people of his age group who was raised and not in that environment. It does so in a lot of deep depression and everything else. And that's where the hopelessness do come in at from men who feel stuck and trapped in this specific situation. All right.
Personally, I agree. I agree with a lot of what MOT just said, but I don't think that that's necessarily a function of matriarchy or gynocracy per se. From my perspective, that's Black American culture as in general, as a whole. That's what it has devolved to. So, you made the ask about what is this cannon fodder that young black males are being made for? From my perspective, recidivism is number one, sports and entertainment is number two, and a ready, unskilled labor force would be the last option. So the criminal justice system, it's about bodies. You know, as many people will scream to the rafters about, one white cop killing one black person, ultimately it's just about numbers. So the easiest place to get those numbers, unfortunately, has been black males. So everyone in that system, they have it's like every person has to justify their job. So moving people through the system, sheer volume. So the volume in and of itself is not enough. So that's where the recidivism comes in. So then you also have your and unskilled workforce. So when you look at those three aspects, combining the athletes and the entertainers, that's the bulk of where you see black boys and black men headed towards. those three things, and that is a reflection of American Black culture. So it's easy to point to any one system, but who wants to eat that food for thought? American Black culture and the mindsets that has that should change. That has to change. If that doesn't change, nothing's going to change. Again, only my personal opinion.
Well, I have to agree, but all cultures have a specific standpoint of who they exalt, and that is Black culture is around making sure they absolve the wrong type of person and provide no incentives for this person to act like a decent person who creates a productive family. So if you want to look at it that way, that is what the culture is supposed to produce. Cannon fodder. That's the actual point at this point. Is to not produce leaders, is to produce people, and by the time they realize they're in a trap, they already have a criminal record.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. You're right.
I think there's even situations where, I mean, this can even be seen. I'm not saying like the African, like the Black community is, I guess, morally overall unjust, but you see pieces of it, right? I mean, just even from the simple stuff as it concerns like basketball, right? If y'all have played basketball, you're on a particular team. Say, for instance, the ball go out of bounds, and you're on the team where they say, "Oh, the ball go that way," right? And you know that you touched it. You know that you touched it before it went out of bounds, but nobody saw it but you. If you say that, "Oh, I touched that before it went out of bounds. My bad. It's the other team ball." How is everybody else going to respond? Your teammates, they're going to be mad at you for not lying. They're going to be absolutely pissed at you for not lying. Like I mean, it happens all the time, and it's just like those small things, which are maybe a small thing, of course, in the big picture. But I think it speaks to that individuals aren't raised up to you, at times have just integrity, right? Which is very much so valued in places like the job market, right? In order for you to have good customers, in order for you to be successful in work environments, of course, corporate America is the politicking and everything at times, but really a lot of times the like company, I guess, integrity, not lying about something in a particular environment. If you can't carry that from your community to your work environment, that can at times be an issue. And so, yeah, just one small example, but maybe also to maybe a bigger issue that might be at play.
All right, I want to get to this point on the of where I'm sharing my screen with on Amazon. So Jenks Morton, shout out to Jenks Morton. He's been doing a lot of this work on the ground for a few years now, probably over a decade, and he's very raw and upfront with it. He produced a book some years ago called "Why He Hates You: How Unreconciled Maternal Anger is Destroying Black Men and Boys." So he's been talking about this stuff for quite some time. Let me just read the excerpt. Jenks Morton is in Jenks Morton, in his semi-autobiographical work, tackles head-on taboo subject of material resentment in African American community. Why specifically maternal resentment? A generation of young Black children have been raised exclusively by single mothers. Morton acknowledges, while that some of these children's um, antipathy may be directed towards the non-residential fathers, predominantly this object and the focus of a young Black boy's rage is directed squarely at the person responsible for their guidance, their direction, their socialization, their joy and their pain, their primary caregivers and providers, their mothers. If you all have not read this book before, you have to read it. It is absolutely amazing work that he's done on this. He also produced some documentaries called "From Men to Boys." Where he further talks about the matriarchy and its impact on Black males. anybody have any opinions on this excerpt in the book itself?
Yeah, it sounds powerful, man. I can't wait to read the book and look up this documentary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the documentary is pretty old, but he also produced the famous documentary that went live on YouTube, which is What Black Men Think. So he was talking manosphere talk back in 2004, 2003 when he produced the documentary. So he, to me, is one of the founding fathers of the manosphere for what we know today. He was really bringing this stuff to YouTube, and he's challenged many people. You could look up some of his videos on YouTube where he does panel discussions and stuff like that, live panel discussions in person, not on Google Hangouts like you see some of these other channels do. The point that I'm making here is that if you have not read this book, you should actually go out there and purchase it off of Amazon right now before they try to discontinue it. Because I know the feminists have come after him and have tried to take him down too, and he's battled them very much with some bare knuckles sometimes. So. Anybody else on the panel besides MOT have an opinion on this?
I saw the I didn't read the book. I actually just purchased the book. It's $2.99 on Kindle, so there's really no excuse about that. But I didn't recognize the name until Mike stated that little documentary he made. I saw that I think in 2006 or 2007, and that was good. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm expecting this book to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Welcome, brother BGS. Black Gnostic Speaks. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, the literature has been clear about this, man, since for about 100 years. It's not anything new. And me and Dr. Johnson were talking about it. And what it is there's a not an unholy alliance, but there's a unspoken secret that is not supposed to be spoken about. Even so if anybody speaks up about it, like this brother that wrote the book, they come after him, and it's not just the feminists.
Oh yeah. I've seen brothers in one of his documentaries. You see brothers getting really physical with him, in person. Try to get physical with him. They do not like that. If you watch a documentary from men to boys, you see how they react when he starts putting pressure on them about the questions, about the impact of a matriarchy and the gynarchy, and they seem to they're very volatile in their behavior. So that's why I said, to Gabe earlier, we have to be mindful about when we address some of these, we make some of these talking points, because you see it in the manosphere. You see some guys ready to jump out of the window, pulling out knives, and ready to go buck wild if you even criticize their holy master. So.
Oh yeah, I got plenty of flack because I've been doing this pretty much for the whole 4 years about boys. My boys have been my focus. Men is almost secondary, but the boys have been my focus because that's where that's the manufacturing process. That's where that turns out these guys, these ineffectual men. Monahan. That's why I put up the Monahan report. He says it in his report, which is why the women went after him. Not just the so-called liberal black men, liberal white men, white females, and black females all went after Monahan.
So my question to you is, what are the consequences of actually revealing this stuff? What is the impact?
Well, but the thing is that black men for 200 years have been used as a scapegoat for just about everything. And if you make them a tragic character or a sympathetic character, you can't use them as a scapegoat anymore. So normally, the black men have been the usual suspects for a very long time. Even I was just reading an article where the FBI finally, after like 3 or 4 years, decided to get rid of the term black identity extremists, even though they couldn't find any. So basically, for any ills in America, they always use black men as a step stool. So in other words, if you want to lock a whole lot of men up, you actually start with the black men, because nobody really cares about black men and black boys.
They're expendable. On to the purpose.
Yeah, they're fodder, like you said, they're fodder for whatever agenda. White women use black men as fodder to get the vote, even for like 50 years, and finally got it after using black military World War I veterans that coming back being hung, and not being able to get their voting rights, even though they were supposed to have it on the books to actually get the women's suffrage. Women's suffrage came through the sacrifice of black men. And black men, black women, white women, and black women threw black men under the bus to get their suffrage.
Wait, quick question. How do you figure that? Please explain that to me.
I mean, if you read Tommy Curry's The Man Not, he basically spells it out, because basically Katie and what's her name? I'm trying to remember her name. Sojourner Truth, who was a feminist, argued that one Sojourner Truth and the other black feminists actually argued back in the 1850s and 60s that if black men got the vote, they would oppress black women just like white men did. And basically, white women said, "How can you give these black men, which were our property, the same rights as white men?" So that Katie, those first suffragists, they were as racist as the white men were.
Well, that that was.
In fact, if you go to Doctor, in fact, he was just on T.S. Johnson's show. He was just talking about it for like 30 minutes. He said exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say I was gonna try to link that discussion. I heard it too.
Yeah. So it's if you go through the book, that's how come he calls it The Man Not. You were neither man, nor male nor female. So basically, you were basically a eunuch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
now,
important that people.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's important that people read this sort of literature so that they get an understanding of, from a modern day standpoint, from some of these guys who are actually putting in the work, the due diligence to discover a lot of this stuff. I went to a conference, and I talked about this. I went to a conference last year, and they had, for the city, and they were talking about minority businesses and stuff like that. And they said that they had a table for like loans and grants and stuff like that. And I walked up to it and I asked, how come it says women and minorities? Who are the minorities? And they said LGBTQ. And I said, who are the women? It's about black women. So where is the black male in all of this? And the brother just shrugged his shoulders and said, "We got to create our own. We got to pull ourselves up by our own straps."
Basically, and I've been, I get tired even saying it. That's like I'm getting frustrated, because people keep asking me for the goddamn documents, and Mike can tell you how long I've been pulling up documents and links and showing people stuff. It had, for 4 years, and people keep asking, so where is this stuff?
Yeah, you had a excellent video that you posted last year or so about the Economic Policy Institute.
Yeah,
and they talk about the disenfranchisement of black males.
Yeah, the Economic Policy Institute did. New York Times did a thing on it. The Brookings Institution did a thing on it. I mean, you can go right down the list, and even after that, nobody cares. The state of California and a couple other states showed that black boys are at the bottom of reading scores, math scores, everything that you can think of. I mean, they did 4 studies that showed that white women actually raise better black boys than black women, because black women have a bias against their own sons. There was one study that linked like 10 studies together to show the exact same thing. So basically, everybody asks, where is it? It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not in one place. It's everywhere. I mean, I've done this stuff too. I mean, I could actually do a whole channel with nothing but this. With nothing but this.
Mhm.
If you go back to actually link people to the Mohawk Conference of 1890, where they actually said that they didn't need to teach black men to read. They said all they had to do was teach them how to draw, and basically they were better fit to be manual labor.
Mhm.
And it really, actually, they had a brother Samson Matic back on a hangout about 3 weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, when I talked about that education for black men wasn't even emphasized until the Kerner Commission in 1968, after Martin Luther King was killed. You had 100 Martin Luther King riots. And so they tried to give black men jobs. So they found out that they're for the modern industrial complex, that black men were not educated enough. So actually they had a push between 1968 and 1980 to actually push the black education rate up, because in 1965, I think it was 1965, she showed the chart. 1965, less than 23% of black men ever got high school diplomas.
So what's the return on
Yeah.
investment, right? What's the return on investment of having a failed demographic in the black community and ignoring it? What's the return on investment there? Who benefits?
Actually, who has benefited so far are basically everybody else, especially white women, because what was actually fought for from 1945 to 1965 to give black males not only civil rights but also economic rights was actually given to the white women in 1968 by Lyndon B. Johnson, when he actually declared that declared sex as part of civil rights. And, in fact, I have it somewhere where he actually had a, because affirmative action is not done through the Congress. It's actually what do they call it? A president's, what do they call a presidential signing? It's trying to think of the name of it.
Executive order.
Executive order. They say it's 112 something something something. Lyndon B. Johnson actually put white women as a protected class in 1968 and added them onto the Civil Rights Bill and made them part of the package. So now that when you go up for loans and stuff like that, women means white women, and minorities means black women, and everybody else, LGBTQ, immigrants, and whatnot. In fact, what's her name? Actually said it. Civil rights were for blacks. Affirmative action was for blacks, but they want to give it to everybody else except black men. The people that actually fought for it. They all fought for it in World War I first when they got hung, and then the second time when it happened after World War II, they decided to start to integrate and actually give black people some sort of rights, because they needed to integrate the two classes.
So,
Affirmative.
so a question I have about kind of the current state, right? So we've seen what has been and what has led up to now, but so where does that leave us currently? And is it all doom and gloom, or is there no hope for us?
There's always hope. The thing is there will to do it? I mean, I've said it here, and basically I said it till I'm blue in the face. What you need to do, if you really want to save your black boys, you're gonna have to cut them off and separate them and give them their own school, because in 1912 they actually showed that if you don't want the boys feminized, you have to not put them in a setting with girls. You have to give them their own male teachers. You have to make them all male schools and all male environment, because that's how boys learn best. And if they want to do that for white boys, that's fine. But I said black boys really need this, because if you don't start there, because unless you have a really great mom and a really great family, or or you're an exceptional individual, very few men are actually going to make it out of this trap. Black men are actually going to make it out of that trap. And you can see,
but if the mindset at home doesn't change, the education won't matter. the two have to go hand in hand. You need education, and you need a complete change in the general overall mindset of Black American culture. However you choose to handle the education piece, I leave that conversation up to everyone else. But education and the mindset at home, it starts and ends at home.
Well, I would
Has to
agree.
begin there.
I would agree with you, except it's already been proven that that's not true because all the every single education black boys school that they've set up has graduated 100%, and basically 90% of those black boys go on to college to a successful degree, a career. It has
And
already been proven.
what was the mindset of the families behind
They are
those black boys?
they come from all over. In other words, in fact, some of them come from the worst places that you could imagine. It's like in
I
Chicago or Dallas.
I can appreciate that, but even within the worst possible
Hmm.
scenarios, if
Hmm.
that individual black boy comes from a environment where the mindset has changed, he will prosper. So you should, I'm saying that
Hmm.
you should give, or you should start a child from the best possible scenarios. The mindsets have to change, and no one wants to look at that.
Well,
What,
No
Paul, I
one
mean,
wants to look at that.
I
Paul,
would
I
agree with you,
suggested.
except for one thing. You can go. You don't have to take my word for it. Go look at the schools themselves. There's one in Baltimore. There's one in Chicago. My cousin just graduated from one in Dallas. Okay, and they come from all over Texas just to go to that school. In other words, you can go look at it yourself. You don't have to believe me.
Well, it's,
Go
It's
look
no,
at
no,
it.
not
and I
about
don't think that's what
it's
I don't think that's what he's arguing. I think what he's saying is that there's a reason why that those type of learning environments are successful, and the reason why they're successful is because there's a certain mindset that would have someone send their children to an institution like that. So what he's saying
it's
is that there has to be a wholesale cultural adoption of the same mindset in order for you to have a fundamental change. That's all he's saying.
You know,
exactly.
that's an opinion. But I'm saying is,
Wait,
oh, okay, all right, go ahead. All right, okay.
that's exactly what I was trying to say.
I
And a handful of schools is great. In order for there to be wholesale change, there has to be wholesale change among the mindsets of black people in black American society as a whole. So that therefore we're not talking about one specific school in Texas or one specific school in one specific city. We're talking in cities all across the country. And we're not talking about that. If we're being in, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, how would you propose a campaign like that? How would you propose that campaign?
See,
who you
now
asking?
that is the $64,000 question. How do you change the mindsets of Black American culture and society as
Well,
a whole?
Paul, I had we kind of prefaced this discussion. I had to step away for a little bit,
Mhm.
but early on, I had made the suggestion that I think there should be a refocus on things like fraternal orders.
Mhm.
I think that as an institution to shepherd, particularly young men, adolescent men, and young men, get them at that age and shepherd them in to being global minded, and also, well, just thinking globally, regardless of whatever venue that they're gonna venture off into, whether it's finance, whether it's tech, whatever it is, there has to be a concerted agenda to create men that have a certain mindset and a certain view about the world. And I think that outside of just your educational institutions, I think again, things like civic groups, fraternal orders, and things of that such, I think that's key for creating like the that more hyper focused type of black male mentality that we need.
Well,
What do you mean?
complex. What you're talking about is basically a rites of passage.
Yeah, in so many
Yeah, I
ways.
mean that's basically what it is, and the same with partially of what Paul was saying. Now, we really can't change people's minds. We can influence. I mean, that's really what we're discussing. And amongst, the blacks in this country, I mean, I think it gets bigger than that because we're trying to do that, say we're trying to do that here, but now we're against, other blacks or a larger population of blacks. And now we're going into the general public. Now we're talking about policies. That's
Well,
when things get real complicated.
well, no, it doesn't get really complicated. I
I
mean,
mean,
we
I
have
think I think it's simple, but I'm saying if you really want to influence the average black family, average. I'm not talking about the guys, the exceptions, the top 5, 10%. No, I'm talking about the average. I'm just talking about touching
You're talking
just
about the
60%.
vast majority.
Yes, yes.
That's who you're
yeah,
talking about. You're talking
Yep.
about the
but is
vast
it yours?
majority of black people.
Yeah.
So, if we're intellectually honest, you look at what you have to work with the vast majority of black people. And I am the first one to always stress education,
Yep.
education, education. We had a hangout dealing specifically
Yeah, we had
with
one. Yeah,
that topic.
Yep.
yep.
All right. But you know what? It is a multi-pronged approach. Education and I'm sorry, my God.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to say that's kind of what we do on this channel, right? This isn't about rescuing everybody. This is about a search and rescue mission for those who are still willing,
Correct.
Now,
right? We're still looking for those people who are still gasping for air, who are saying throw me a life raft.
now, if that's the point, specifically what you just said, Mike, you already know my opinion. That criteria, percentage-wise, is infinitesimal. If I'm of the personal opinion, it is less than 5%. But that's just my personal
Well,
opinion.
Paul, I mean, I think more than anything, because if you're gonna, if you want to serve as an inspiration and as a person to motivate and do all that to get people to think and change differently, then there's an industry for that, and it's life coaching and it's all that. Okay. However, there's only but so much that, okay, just speaking from myself personally, there's only so much that is that I can do to be a motivating factor. I contribute to a channel that I'm proud to be a founder of. One of the co-founders of, and so I make it a point to contribute and to push the narrative. But I also have to be a productive person. That's the other thing too. So the things that we discuss, on this platform here, in some ways we all have to be an embodiment of that. Right. So not only am I hoping to serve as an agent of influence by the discussions that are had on this platform, but by real world, real life shit that I actually do in terms of like my career, my business, all that type of stuff too. So these things are, they coincide. They both have to reflect outwardly, and people have to be able to not only listen to the dialogue, but then also see it in action.
Question.
Yes.
How many black men who, how many black men who are successful in life financially with a business, or they're in the corporate world and they have hobbies and interests outside of mainstream Black American society, and they speak differently and their diction and grammar is different and they get shunned? Okay, because I see people like Robert F. Smith did more to help black men than a lot of quote unquote pro-blacks, and yet he was attacked and maligned all because he's not black enough, which are claims, or because of what he has on his arm. And how many black men are called, oh, you talk white, you sound white, you like white people stuff. But yet those very same black men who have the resources, they're told, oh, you have to give back to the community. So my question is, they get attacked. What impetus do they have to
Yeah,
for
well,
what you've done.
Paul, I
actually,
mean,
What look like.
Robert F. Smith was how I found out about him was through the conscious community. He's been here in the conscious community or the real pro-black sector for a very long time, well before he actually burst onto the scene. He's been that way for a long time. The thing is that with social media, people that pretend to be woke or pro-black are actually shitting on them. But those people, if you actually check their credentials, they're not part of the community. They've never done anything. They just tag on a label.
well, this is why I'm saying, like, you have to be a fucking example of what you're talking about, right? So I think that clearing the college debts, of some few
Mm-hmm.
hundred black men, that I think that's more of an overt act of pro-blackness than
Mm-hmm.
any goddamn libation poured on the live stream.
But
But the thing is, he's been doing that for 20 years. He didn't just start yesterday.
yeah, he was doing that way back in college, man.
Oh
Yeah.
no. I mean, I'm well aware of this, but what I'm saying
Okay.
is that I'm saying that there's the social perception of
Mm-hmm.
what pro quote unquote pro black is, right? Like by social media standards, and then there's the actual acts of pro blackness, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the actual acts of pro blackness always hold more weight and more volume than the pro black ideal du jour.
Half the books that the pro-black people read, okay, came from men that were married to white women.
Well, that's for pro black folks
So in
to
other words,
point out.
I don't know where all of a sudden these new jack black people come in saying just because a dude is married to a white woman that he's not pro-black. That's been bullshit forever.
But that has a tremendous amount of traction. If we're all being intellectually honest, that
Mm-hmm.
has a tremendous amount of traction. And there are more black people who feel that way as opposed to the quote unquote, to borrow your term, real pro blacks. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any dog in the fight. I don't. But
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting, and I find it very intellectually disingenuous by a lot of black people.
Because they're taking on black female talking points.
Yep.
Those are black female talking points.
But
I
at the
think
end of the
what
day, yeah.
yeah, I mean, Roberts, he's an example. I think he's a good example. He got it done, and he's unapologetic. He's not what happens to a lot of the guys who make it. Like it's like many of them they don't have to, but they kind of put on like a show, kind of saying I'm still with you guys. No, he just did it.
Well, that's the reason
And
why
he
I'm saying
and
there's
yeah,
more. There's more to the action.
yeah, he did it. And even though he's getting blasted for it right now, I haven't heard any comebacks because
He doesn't. He
he
doesn't
doesn't have
care.
time.
He doesn't care.
Exactly. I think as more black men become their better selves and do that, how long that's going to take, who knows? But to see that in public at that grand scale, that is a beacon, I think.
Yeah, I mean, no, simply put, the fake pro-blacks, the fake ones, are all about exalting the women who they fleece. That's all they're about.
Mm-hmm.
Is making them feel acceptable, promising them a future without examination of their past. That's what fake pro-blackness is about. Real pro-blackness is about exalting the actual people who's in the position who need it the most. Fake pro-black is about selling people a dream of the people who are the least, that they're going to have this benediction or clean slate sold to them by somebody who's stupid enough just to do it just because they're black. I mean, that's the two things that we're spending time on here.
So what we're gonna do? Go back and skewer Frederick Douglass.
Yeah, I mean, but if you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
it's very easy to separate the two because I've never heard of any of these fake pro-blacks even ask that type of question. Because when you're that tacitly full of garbage, you're always going to pick and choose your actual spaces to which you go and establish your nonsense. You're going to pick those spaces to where you're not going to be challenged. And those places are normally the places where you get the most type of traction. This is why I say just separate all the way from them. You let them have those people, since they're promising all that stuff to them, they should be the ones who deliver. And we just focus on the people who we need to focus on because they already have a focus. Our focus has to be better and more laser focused than their focus. That's all I got.
It comes down to if you. That's why I always challenge the women. I've been doing this since day one, even on my women's panel. I said, if you don't want to save your boys, admit it and move on. If you want to lead the black community, then you're responsible for leading the black community and making it better.
Well, the thing about it is this. I mean, whether they admit it, I mean, I don't know what admittance ultimately is going to do. I mean, I can admit something. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to change anything. I can admit it, but right, it'll still remain. And this is the reason why I just say, look, you know, there has to be some sort of like, again, fraternal order structure type. We need to get that back going and just say, look, there's a certain way men are going to operate regardless as to what the fuck women are talking about.
Well,
Right?
the thing, men can operate that, but the thing is, you know, this is the problem. Okay. Is it easier to, you know, and basically Frederick Douglass said this way back. If a ranked society
Easier to build strong children
strong
and
men
repair
rather
broken
than
men.
repair broken men, basically, yeah. So basically, that's the whole focus. You can't change it if you keep churning out bad product, you know, on and over and over and over again, generation after generation. Nothing's going to change.
But I can't be responsible personally, right? And I don't even think as men collectively, unless you're going to really step up and take responsible for what it is that you produce in terms of children. But outside of that, if women have if they have a preset mindset that sets their young boys up, right, to essentially be fodder, which is, you know, the title of this video. Okay, then, you know, the only thing that I can hope for is that they can somehow side with reason at some point, right? But short of that, they've already, on your own hangout, they said, look, you know, what it's going to take to change is for black men to leave. I mean, I don't know what greater message needs to be sent.
Why not just go ahead and just go about the business of just getting it done? Personally, I don't need an admission. I don't need to have any more discussions. I'm about one thing and one thing only: putting
Straight
money
up.
on the table. I don't need
Oh,
an admission. I don't care. Personally, I don't see personally. I don't
It's not.
see the point.
It's not for you. It's for the people that are still lost.
Yeah, but it's endless debate. It's endless debate,
I
decade
think I
after
see where Paul's
decade.
coming from. Yeah, I think I see where Paul's coming from. I think he's saying either put up or shut up.
Exactly. It
Go,
is
go ahead,
it's
MOT.
an emotional orgasm to just keep talking and talking and talking. All right, enough. Once you have identified the problem, you go about and you solve the problem. So for me personally, I don't need to have endless debate. I don't need to have admissions. I don't need to have discussions. I'm going to go out and do the business of taking care of what needs to be done. And the best that I can do is just be an example and serve as a beacon, as an example. For those who will choose to share my mindset, they will choose to share the mindset. For those who want to sit around and argue and debate and talk and discuss, have at it. Because they will be exactly where they are down the road when I met them, doing nothing, spinning their wheels.
Go ahead, MOT.
yeah. For this, the reason why they don't want a merit-based system is because everything that's based on right now is based on things that don't matter. So if you come in with a merit-based system, which I do agree with, this is why I said just separate from it. There's no person who you can argue with who doesn't care about that. who doesn't care about the input and output process. Most men in this sector vehemently defends the ability for one half of the family structure to date and procreate with whoever they want to without regard of the output of the process, and then expect other men to come through and finish the actual process for them. Those are people you can't argue with. They're already done. You can't solve that equation. What you have to do is what BGS said. It's not only leaving them alone, which is easy. It's making sure you disqualify all until they get their stuff collectively together. Because there's a lot of people who watch this stuff go on and not say anything. So,
There's a lot of people there that help procreate this stuff. You know,
yes,
high up on the hill. I mean, I don't know how many professors you have to talk to actually know that. It's not something that starts at the bottom. This is goes from the top all the way down. Look at what they're doing with Kamala Harris, and how they're not doing it to talking about guys that are Pookie and Ray. They talk about the elite black men. You know, they're talking down to them too.
Oh yeah, remember the situation in Detroit with the city council, where she called the head of the city council Shrek. You know that brother.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the video's on YouTube. You could do a YouTube search on black women goes off on city council, and she was a part of city council, and they ended up removing her later. And if you look at the follow-up video, when the kids in the classroom asked her why she went off like that, and her rationalization, it really comes down to that sort of mindset that I have no respect for black men, no matter what position they're in.
Buy your female, buy your black female politicians, buy them.
Exactly. Why is it everybody else has figured this out except black people? Politicians are puppets. Left wing, right wing, it's all the same bird.
Paul,
everything you see is public theater. You buy your politicians. For some reason, black people seem to feel, oh, it's fair, and we have to get the right politicians in there, and we have to hold their feet to the fire. No one does that. They buy their politicians. But for some unknown reason, black people refuse to open their eyes to that. You have to buy your
we have this childish expectation of fairness. That's the problem.
MOT. No.
I'm sorry.
You buy the politician, and then you also buy her campaign rival, and you force her hand.
Oh yeah.
If she doesn't do your bidding, she's out of there. I don't give a fuck what you feel about me personally, bitch. Do it.
That's how the game is played. You know,
because we don't finance in politics.
Look at the numbers. When Barack Hussein Obama was elected president the first time, what would correct me, someone, if I'm wrong, 98 or 97% of registered, keyword registered, black voters voted for Barack Hussein Obama. President Baby Bush, his first time around, I believe he got 3% of registered black voters. Then he got either 6 or 7% his second time. Mitt Romney, I believe, got 7%. The point I'm trying to make is black people have proven to the Republicans that they don't need you to win elections. Win or lose, they don't need you. They know
if they can steal elections,
Democrat.
If they can run in gerrymandered seats and sway the game that way, they can win. That's why they're turning over some of that in the Justice Department and making certain kind of in the DOJ. And I give a lot of credit to not only Barack but Holder, who everybody hated because he looked at that shit and said, "Let's get up on top of that." Democratic Party has made some sense out of trying to move into that. You've got these districts drawn like salamanders. That's why they call it gerrymandering, because they move like salamanders around and creating white districts for themselves, which are absolutely obscene, and they've been fought against. That's why you take a look at the Congress turnaround over, and they're going to continue to do that. The Republicans are not going to be able to sit back and just say, we don't need you because we can gerrymander seats. They're going to have to be able to then move more towards, let's say, a more fair electoral process as these further lawsuits go into place through the DOJ and work through it. And they're trying to get that happening, of course, now in the Senate. We have Senate seats that literally draw the black districts out. Okay, you got to look at that. See, this is a sophisticated game where certain kinds of techniques and objects are used to keep it that way. You fight it, you move around it. That's why you had such issues in Florida and in Georgia because of a lot of that. And that's why you saw these. You hear two black candidates in two districts that in the old South, that of Bobby Lee and Jeff Davis. I've sat down and damn near got into the governor's office. All right, where they shouldn't have really had that type of how would I say plurality. So even this woman winning in Newt Gingrich's old district. So when we sit down and we talk about this, we have to look at this thing for what it is, not for what a lot of people would like to say that it is. All right, and they're using tactics. Now, fine, that's what you'll use in war. But at the end of the day, the counter to that is to stop a lot of what they're doing. And then they're going to sit down, well, we ain't going to need them. Well, there's going to come a point in time when that might change. I'm just saying, let's bring a little order to this conversation. Let's put it in its proper perspective. I want us to make sure that we're on top of that as well.
Let me play this video. Let me play this video real quick. Let me play this video real quick so that people understand what I was referring to about the city council member in Detroit going off on the other brother on the panel. She called him Shrek and called him a few other disrespectful terms that I won't say here. But basically, this brother is the head of the city council, and she is just a constituent as well on the panel. And if you look at the video, she is turning her head to him. She's cussing him out.
Yeah, I saw this. I've seen this video.
Yeah.
She was like super disrespectful to this dude.
Mm-hmm. So this brother, regardless of what his position is, he is also cannon fodder, just like some of these other black males. Look at the white woman looking at her. So BGS, what's your take on something like this?
No, this is typical. It's more typical than you know, which is why most brothers don't stand up to their own women, because we've been socialized not to.
Can you get leadership out of that?
Can you get leadership out of what? Out of the brother, or out of this?
Out of the brother who has been castrated socially to not respond or to have a more docile approach to this.
That's like most brothers that are like this, that are in leadership functions, that do have that, or have to go outside of the unfortunately outside of the black community to do so, which is, I think, is unfortunate. You have a rare few that can actually balance that between kissing black women's asses and actually doing what they need to do, but those are rare few.
Well, I mean, a leader in that regard, Mike, would essentially just be somebody who kind of functions, to the benefit of, the opposite gender. But he would be a leader nonetheless in that regard. I'm being subjective here.
I mean, it sounds to me like we're just the term leadership has been relegated to just being cunnilingus kings.
Okay, you got me.
You're trying to get the stream flagged, right, Mike? Good job.
It probably won't get flagged. It probably get more thumbs up, if anything.
You know what?
That's what they seem to like.
You know what? You're right.
And most black people don't know what cunnilingus actually is.
They think it's
they do it all the time. They do it all the time.
Yeah, they know what it is, but they don't know.
They don't know that.
That's pretty funny. I think you're right about that.
Right. They may do it, but they don't know that name.
What it is. I don't know what I do it, but I don't know what I call it.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more on that point. I mean, if you're sitting up there Well, no, I'll stop.
Yeah. Basically, this is typical throughout our what they call our leadership class. I mean, from the academy all the way up. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. This kind of tone toward black men. Um, in the leadership class all the way down to the ghetto, it really is the same. Um, like Simone Sanders, when
Oh
she
yeah,
went after Luke
Luke
for making
and,
a
and Angela Rye.
yeah yeah
There's a Gestapo. The Gestapo is
hmm
in the Democratic Party, and that's why I say Cannon Fodder. But what are they Cannon Fodder to? I mean, we could point to
hmm
the Democratic Party. We can point to the Christian Church. We can point to the school board or the school or the academy.
hmm
Um,
yeah, because I was I think I told you a while back that Nicole Ali's mother had to is constantly fighting her school district, her local schools, to actually keep black boys out of special education.
mhm.
They don't need to go there because, like I would say, 90% of black boys being put in special education don't need to be there.
In New York, let me just piggyback on that point. New York and Connecticut, two
hmm
states, were of some of the biggest leaders in the country
hmm
of warehousing black and Hispanic
hmm
young boys into special education, and ultimately the state sat down and looked at this, and they started to look and did a real study on how many were really going into special ed didn't need it, and they've been actually trying to turn this around since 2005 because they've said that literally, especially young black males, were being warehoused
hmm
in special education classes, and they had no reason to be there. And one of the things that I found very disturbing about this fact in the school system was many of these school systems that were in black communities
hmm
were actually run by many black female
Well, administrators,
Yes.
and in fact, because they get it, because
administrators,
because they
and
get
so
extra money for black boys being that's funny. You get extra money for putting your own black boys into special education instead of
Well,
teaching them.
Right.
because special
and
education programs receive a different set of funding
Mhm.
from like the city
correct.
and state
It's the money.
governments, and
It's the
so
money.
like dude,
It's
this was one
it's
of the chief complaints that my
it's
wife had when
it's
she
the
was an
money.
educator in Chicago, is that
Mm,
all of the black boys would get pushed into special education because that's like a sub industry within the industry,
mhm.
and it
That's exact.
has its whole
I was
round of
going to
funding.
I was going to
Go
make
ahead, go
that
ahead, go
point.
ahead, go ahead and go.
Great point. They're complex. You're dead on it. That's exactly what it's been. These black women know what's going on, and they're sitting back there, and they're and that's part of the problem. That's why Jeffrey Canada, okay, in the Harlem Children's School Zone, and all them, and these guys that go all the way up to Thurgood Marshall High School over there, they are sitting back here, and it's being run by brothers, and they're sitting there saying, "We're not having this." And and here you have young black males performing at some of the highest levels that you have in the country in this school system that these guys are set up, that is independent
Mhm.
of the New York City School Board, okay, that is sitting back. What I have found is that when we take over our education
Mhm.
and we have supreme black education, we know how to educate our kids who take it over, we do stellar. So the name of the
Yes.
game is to get it out of their hands, all right? Let us run it ourselves with the proper professionals in place, and this is what we have to do in order to save our schools and save our boys.
Well,
Get it out of their hands. Take
Nago,
it out of these
we
sisters.
we
Get them from the front of these gray broads and run this thing ourselves.
Mhm.
And that's what we have to do. And get them in front of these New York City or LA County or whatever school boards that are sitting here that have no actual interest in educating your children at that level.
or at a bare minimum, just to follow up on a prior hangout we had maybe a few weeks ago, we went in depth on Montessori schools as one alternative, and it's an alternative that I highly recommend. I would highly recommend that anybody listening, go check that hangout out. It was one we did just specifically dealing with Montessori schools and education.
Hey,
About
Ronnie Holmes
education.
has been on. Ronnie Holmes has been on the panel, hasn't spoken yet.
Hey, what's going on, Ronnie?
Oh, thank you. I've been listening to this conversation. It's pretty great, and I can tell you, with working with youth programs in the past, that for the most part, there's no interest in developing black boys past getting them to dribble a basketball or looking fresh for a girl. And these are the mothers I'm talking about. And,
Facts.
and when
Facts.
and it is really, really sad, because when your own mother sees you as expendable and less than human, that does mental damage to you. That's almost it takes the act of God to remove that stigma from your mind.
Oh no, you
And
didn't. Oh
oh
no, you
yeah,
didn't say that.
yes I did.
Oh
And I'm
no, you
thankful
did.
for,
Oh no, you didn't.
yes sir. And and I'm just thankful for the men that have been in my life. From my grandfather, when my father died, he stepped up, and I had other male mentors. I'm sorry, but
Let
the
us speak.
key
Let us
is,
speak, please.
sure.
No, go ahead,
And
Ronnie. Go ahead,
okay, thank you. And going on, I had at various points in my life, I had male mentors that showed me that the key to being masculine wasn't seeking female validation, but seeking the best in yourself. And it's kind of hard to impart that to other black males, because we're taught to please the woman, please mama, please your wife, please everybody but yourself. So I think one of the main things we have to come into understanding is validating yourself as a human being. And that doesn't mean please, and sometimes that means you have to go against pleasing everyone else. You have to make yourself happy. And I don't mean that in a hedonistic, selfish way, but in a way that fulfills you as a human being. And I've worked with, and like say in the past, with youth programs and different organizations to help black men reach the value of themselves. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because that pull is just too strong. And you have a lot of people who really like you to be in a downtrodden, beaten down condition, and they do everything to enable that while they say they love you. So I just want to say I really appreciate this conversation. And I think, back to what Nagon was saying, we have to go back to, simply put, we have to educate and develop our own, because we're the only thing we have. We have no friends, no allies. It's just us.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent points. Great
You
stuff.
touched
And I
on
got a
one
point.
Great
point
stuff.
that
How
no
long to
one
make
wants
with
to
that?
talk.
Great stuff.
You
Can
touched
I?
on one
Yeah,
point that no one wants to talk about: the black church. You can't touch it. It's like trying to touch the sun with your bare hands. That is a major, major contributor to a lot of the problem. That black church, and you will get even more resistance for saying that than saying anything else.
Get a
Oh, if
vote.
I had that
Yes.
conversation too.
yeah. I mean, I had a program shut down to help black boys for like the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. Their reading and math went way up, and they shut the program down. Why? Because they're getting funding cuts because the boys are doing better. So they'd rather get rid of the program and let the boys get put back in special ed, so that way the woman can get a check. And I don't know if I even want to do another one. I mean, it's like the fifth or sixth one. They get shut down every couple of years once the numbers come out. And it's just that at some point, you have to care about the input to give a damn about the output. I don't think they do. I mean, the only thing we could possibly do
MOT, go into
right now,
detail. MOT, go into detail about how they shut you down. Go into detail on that. Go into some detail on that.
yeah, all right. I mean, so they did it first way by just getting women to like pull their boys out the program, just for no reason, just pulling them out of the program. I mean, because they was able to keep their checks and all that kind of stuff. But once the superintendent of the schools started to put that type of whisper campaign out there that told them that, you know what, if you don't pull your boys out of this school, and if they do too good, then you won't get your extra money. That's when they wholesale started dropping from the program. Like, that's what you have going on here. And it was a man, not a woman, who shut this program down this time. Most of the time, it was men doing the behest of women who shut those programs down to help black boys. So that's what you have going on. So when people talk about we're not going to criticize who they love and all this kind of stuff, what you're pretty much saying is that it's okay for the system to keep running the way it is, but you want to expect a different result from the actual system. And we just got to break off, split off, and form our own stuff, man. I mean, there's communities doing this in New York that I've seen. You know, they had their own buses that pick up their kids and everything. They don't allow the state to do nothing with their people.
That's the short of it. We just have to build and develop and protect our own and not allow others to infiltrate it or tear it down.
Yeah.
Well, you have to have institutions in place that'll serve as, you know, mechanisms of just, you know, protection and housing of, you know, of accumulated assets. I mean, we're talking about, you know, having financial institutions. We discuss fintech all the time, you know, cryptocurrencies, you know, blockchain. Look, this is all going to be the wave of well, I don't even want to say the wave of the future. It's here, right? This is kind of like what predicates, you know, the bulk of the content on this platform here. You know, so it's really like actively strategizing. We do have a diagram, you know, that basically represents, you know, how we sort of view the world broken up into, you know, spheres of political influence and industry, you know, and it kind of serves as a map, so you can kind of pick where your area of interest is, and then you start to pursue opportunities in these areas which would allow you to, one, extract resources externally, you know, external to these shores here, and then two, patriate those resources here. And this is how, you know, we can develop strategies, you know, to create not only the institutions but house the newly accumulated flows of wealth that'll start to come in through us just, you know, taking a global approach to things.
Complex.
Look, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Let me say this real quick, because I think Dr. Phoenix wants to get on the panel. Sauchi, can you rotate out, please, and give up your spot for Dr. Phoenix? Thanks. Go ahead, Paul.
Everything that Complex just said, and this is a question to every member on the panel. Everything that Complex just said. If the majority of Black people are not thinking along that mindset, how can you make that happen? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to, it's a question. It is a genuine question coming from a space of genuine curiosity. If the majority of people are not thinking like that, how do you make these things happen?
You can only work with those who do.
Can I say, so, look, we got a problem that we're not dealing with it. I don't know, the way a normal man would deal with the situation. When a man got to build a house, he's going to start by creating a plan, you know, some kind of architectural plan, and move from there. And in the Black community, it seems like we watched. I mean, I can see several industries that are built around the destruction of Black children and men. I mean, from the baby is born, and then abortions to the getting the the kids to take care of the mothers. I heard mothers call kids their husband. You know, um,
Don't forget the
so when you
prison
get,
industrial complex.
I was just about to say, and when they get to be 13 years old, the prison is waiting. You know what I'm saying? And my idea is, you know what? Get rid of the damn women. Leave them alone. Take your sons by any means necessary. If you walk up to the house at night and say, look, I want my son. I'm coming back tomorrow morning to pick him up. If you got the policeman here, they can kill me. That'd be it. If you got a policeman here, bring the policeman, let him kill me, but I'm taking my son. You can go to court and all that. But guess what? I'm going to take my son. That's what we have to do. We got to take the sons away from these people and raise them ourselves.
Yeah.
I also think that there's a difference, De, in how the Caribbean deals with it versus how they do it in America. In the Caribbean, if you failed at school, man, or if you weren't doing well in school, you got licks.
Bro,
Well, here you
that was
can't beat they tell the kids. One day, my son looked at me and says, I sit him down. He come home and don't want to do his homework. I sit him down and say, look, I'm gonna beat your behind if you don't do this. He said, that's child abuse. I said, you know what? Here's the phone. You call the police. Call the police. My teacher said that's child abuse. I said, look, you call the police. He said, yeah, I'll call the police. I said, by the time you get here, you're gonna be dead. So, you know, I can
I
do it
was told the
any way you
same
want to
exact
do it.
thing growing up, bro. Growing up West Indian is a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, he came from the Caribbean. He was born in Barbados, came here, and some ignorant teacher is going to tell him how he's supposed to react around me. Are you kidding me? Your teacher can't deal. Your teacher can't live in my house. They say that's the way you're going to do things for me. I'm telling you. When you go to school, you come home. And he said, well, the teacher's doing this and the teacher's doing that. I said, look, when you left school, you come home and you get a different kind of education. By the
You got
time you
beat
get back
twice.
to school, you know what the teachers know. What the teacher's going to teach tomorrow, you know it already.
Man, my old man was like that, but he was 82nd Airborne, Raleigh, North Carolina style, Tar Heel.
Okay, so, so I
That was
got
it.
family in Carolina
It was no joke.
that came from Barbados. If you look at the people, if you look at the history of Barbados and Carolina, it's tied together. The people from the Outer Banks, yes. So you see them, they act the same way, the same names, and you know they speak the same, almost speak the words, almost the same language.
Very accurate. Very accurate.
Bro,
Hey, Dr. Phoenix, what's going on? Welcome to the panel. You have anything you want to contribute of what you heard so far?
What's going on, sir?
Yeah, good evening to the brothers on the panel. Yeah, I talked about this in previous hangouts about the special education system and how essentially black boys are broken early as children. They get broken very early in their lives. And essentially how it works, and the brother Nagon was talking about what goes on in New York and well, I think he said Connecticut, I believe. I'm originally from Chicago, so I grew up in Chicago, grew up in Inglewood neighborhood in Chicago, so that goes without saying. And I had a lot of my family members that personally rolled back with the Gangster Disciples, so they were involved in this back. You know, Larry Hoover was running the show, and they used to roll with the Jeff Fords back in the day and stuff like that. Most of them cats are dead now, so. But with that said, going to the issue of the mothers, typically what happens when it comes to the special education system, it is the mothers who funnel these boys into the special education system, usually at the behest of a white teacher. As the brother BGS pointed out, and Nagon pointed out as well, most of the teachers in the education system, 90% of them are white female, usually suburban. Many of them, most of them tend to be Polish. And so what happens is that typically you have a lot of boys, again, born to single mother and single mother households. And so these boys don't have the structure, don't have that male structure that usually comes with having an intact family and having the father involved in their lives. And because of that, these boys tend to grow with a number of, psychological issues, neurological issues, and they become commodities to these mothers very, very early in their lives. So the teacher will approach the mother and say, well, your son's a little hyperactive, I can't really control him, and I think he might have this or ADHD. And so the mother says, oh, okay, and the teacher will suggest, well, you need to go see a specialist to get him prescribed medication. So they prescribe, something like Ritalin, Adderall, or Concerta, some other stuff like that. And so what happens is that the child gets put into the special education system, and there's a whole, it's called an IEP, an individual education plan that gets developed. So typically the school psychologist and the speech language pathologist, the ones that work in the school, they develop this plan, and this plan will follow the child, because once a child gets placed into the special education system, they cannot get out. They're in there for the entirety of their academic career. So it follows them from elementary school all the way through high school, even going into if they do go to college, assuming that they go to college. And so essentially the school gets money. Typically, it depends on the school system, but some of the numbers I know of anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 per student. And the mother also gets kickback. And the other side of that too, if in the event that, let's say, the mother comes to her senses and says that, well, this child, I don't think my son has XYZ. I don't think he has ADHD. I actually like the brother Umar Johnson's definition of it. He called it ain't no daddy at home disorder. I think that's pretty appropriate in these cases. But in the event that she does come to her senses and say, well, my child doesn't have this, they cannot legally force those kids to stop taking meds. So if the mother pulls those kids off meds, they can be stripped of parental rights, and those kids can be placed into the foster system.
So then the kids have to fall into that in the first place.
Because of their goddamn mother.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So essentially what happens is that at all levels, young black males from pretty much from birth to the grave are essentially become commodities within the system. So whether it's we're seeing the mothers, and I mean we've all seen the damn videos of the mothers acting fools on draft day. The kids gets drafted into one of these D1 schools, or they're going pro. The mother's acting a goddamn fool over on ESPN or something. We've seen this. Or it's the boys that, I think Kevin Durant told this story a couple years ago for Mother's Day, how he talked about how his mother would essentially get him up at 4:00 in the morning, and she'll force him to practice every single day when he was a little boy, and eventually turn him into the ball player he is now. But again, you see this happens at all levels in black males' lives. And I can tell you a personal story. When my last semester, when I was in my bachelor's program, I got into a public argument with a black girl in my class, and she started calling me stuff like irritating, and she found out real quick the Chicago nigga came out. And I pretty much cursed her out in front of everybody. All these white folks heard me tell her to shut the fuck up, and XYZ, and I said this, and eventually what happened was that I had to go see the program director, and they almost got me kicked out my last semester of nursing school. Never forget it. But again, you do see this inherent lack of respect for brothers, no matter what level of society you're in, whether it's the brother at the very base level, or it's the brothers as in the video that Mike played, where your brothers at the high levels, the elites and stuff like that. You see this wholesale lack of respect for brothers at all levels. And again, just going back to that personal, to what Brother Nagone and BJS was talking about the special education system. I mean, this is what happens. It is the mothers that funnel and shepherd these boys into these special education systems, and they can never get out.
I have a question.
Facts.
I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead. No, I'm just saying those are facts, man. That's horrible to hear that, but that's absolutely true.
Well, then my question is: has a lawsuit ever been filed against these people for doing that? Because
It's
that's
perfectly legal.
violating
That's
rights.
exactly what happened in New York City. That's what happened here in New York City schools and Connecticut. They were sued for this. They were
On
sued for this.
one hand, is legal, and on the other hand, unless you can prove that they don't have it. I mean, it's a very subjective diagnosis. To say that a child has ADHD is very subjective.
Yeah,
Basically, any psychologist can come along, and really what they need it for is not because the actual diagnosis exists, even though it is in the DSM. However, the primary reason for the diagnosis is to get you the medication. You can't get
Yeah,
medicated if you have no
in
diagnosis.
the New York City system, the numbers were so high they sued them. Parents started suing. Some
Yeah, I
women
think
and men started suing the system because of what was going on.
yeah,
And
I
then when
think
they
if you
started to
look,
look at it from 2005 to 2010, it was alarming. And they sat
yeah,
back and said, we have to change this.
yeah, some of
New
the
York
numbers that
and
I've
Connecticut.
seen, yeah, some of the numbers that I've seen across various metros in the country were anywhere between 70 and 80% of the students in the special education program were Black boys.
Oh,
And,
those were the numbers. In fact, I think one year they had it close to 90. And people
yeah,
looked at it and said,
I can believe
what
that because
is
these are
this?
direct pipelines
And,
to the prison system. Most of the
Exactly.
boys
and they
that
were
end up in
housing.
the special
That's
education,
exactly correct. And they were warehousing the young boys like they were cannon fodder and setting them up, man, for failure.
yeah,
That's what you had. And it was at the behest of this Afro-American female administrator. And you had to sit down and look at this and say, listen, brothers get heavy and hard on some of these women. But damn,
And, and
when you start to examine some of this, it's hard not to have to sit down and come at them in some ways. It's hard. It's
and these
hard, man.
same
It's hard.
people will come into the manosphere and call them beta male coons.
The same, yeah. But look
If
at what
not worse.
they do. Forget about what they say. Look at what they do.
to even go even further with that, if you were to look at the numbers just for the number of NBA players, NFL players, the rate of single motherhood, the numbers for Black males in prison, the numbers are practically the same. There's a strong correlation between single motherhood, boys in prison, boys and special Black boys, well, black males in the prison system, Black males within the special education system, the numbers of Black males that are NFL and NBA players, and how all of it tends to start from just the genesis of these boys being born to single mothers. Again, we're seeing it. I mean, the brother BGS, I heard what he was saying earlier. He's exactly right. We're talking about something that's been systemic for well over a century. Well over a century.
So in essence, these women are bigger white supremacists than the Klan.
yeah.
I will argue they're wholesale worse. I will argue in many respects they're worse.
I
Again,
agree.
I try not to delve into this realm of, what a lot of cats in the Black manosphere do, but I do think just based on what I've known and what I've seen and I've experienced, being in the healthcare sector, this is wholesale what happens to many, many, if not most Black boys. The state I'm in and the city I'm in, you have a black boy. Less than about 70% of the Black boys don't graduate out of the Milwaukee public school system. They don't receive a high school diploma, which is somewhere in line where you'll find in Chicago. Chicago has pretty abysmal rates. I come out of the public school system in Chicago, so I know that. But I was lucky enough to go to magnet school, so but I consider myself a special case. But again, this tends to be the norm, what you see across the board in just about every city where Black people are in any significant numbers.
And don't forget to mention. Don't hold on. First and foremost, I'd like to say hello to everybody in the panel. Hello to everyone in
Hey,
the chat. All
Great to
right.
see you again, brother.
Yeah, nice to see you, Dr. Phoenix. And don't even forget to mention that in the public school system, there's a lot of verbal and physical abuse that goes on when it comes to the teachers abusing a lot of these Black boys. Me growing up in the New York City public education system, I've seen it. I've seen teachers just abusing and traumatizing the hell out of these black boys. I mean, I've seen situations where a teacher lost, and this is a male teacher, unfortunately, a black male teacher, lost his temper on a fifth grader and literally physically beat him up and assaulted him. And this guy did not go to jail. This guy did not go to jail. I don't know how. I
Oh,
remember
hell no.
this was a guy in my this was the guy that no, excuse me, the young boy at that time that was getting physically assaulted. He was in my class. I remember it's like it was yesterday. The teacher's name, his name is Mr. Martin, and the guy was still teaching. Yeah, I mean, I was physically assaulted too by a female teacher. Yeah,
She pulled your
slapped in
dread.
the
Listen, I went to a white school system when I was a very young kid, and I saw more than one white boy get slammed up against the chalkboard, but by rather aggressive teachers. I even saw a white female Irish broad teacher named, I never forget, named Miss Bethencourt, grabbed one of my boys, Barry Weintraub, slammed him up against the wall, had his feet dangling, and said, "I'm gonna keep you here till you start crying."
But this,
So
but this
teachers,
was
I hate to say it,
but
we see this shit. There's a lot of abuse that goes on in the school system
yeah,
overall.
like
I
the
have
school
to agree
system.
with you on that. That's across the board.
The school system, like the school system that I was attending, the abuse was so great to the point that a lot of us as students at that time we thought it was normal. That's how crazy it was. The abuse.
I saw a lot of shit too, man.
And hold on, and a lot of the mothers were so neglectful that a lot of them didn't care. You know,
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to have my parents that stood up for me, and the teacher that assaulted me got kicked out of school. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of abuse. I mean, I really think that is, you bring up a big point, because I definitely, if it was going on in the white school system wholesale, and you had guys say, if you keep talking, I'm gonna hurt you, and all this kind of crap. I saw a lot of kids get fucked up. If it was going on like that where I went to school, I know that in the black school system it must have been appalling, because I saw a lot of ass whooping going on, and I thought that was crazy back when I was in public school.
If I can even add something to expand on what the brother Wacky is saying, I would go even a step further and say that I would surmise that you have a pretty sizable group of black males who are experiencing undiagnosed sexual trauma.
I would agree with that.
And I would say that on top of the physical and mental and emotional abuse that young black boys suffer, there's also a component of sexual trauma, sexual abuse that takes place. And from what I personally, just from what I've heard and what I've had brothers talk to me about, is that this is occurring very young in these boys' lives. We're talking, early teens, some even younger, going back to even younger than that. And you guys referenced the story of Antoine Fisher earlier. Yeah, and this is I would say that's more the norm. His story is probably the norm. I would say that's essentially what's happening here.
Yeah, Shahrazad Ali talked about this on YouTube a few years ago, that the majority of that is happening to black boys and not black girls, and that elicited a lot of attacks against her. But when I was younger, that was pretty common in the '90s, especially when the feds came through and swept all the drug dealers off the streets. Man, they came with the National Guard and all these bulldozers knocking down people's houses and stuff like that, almost immediately, even to bother doing any true investigations. But when those dudes got locked up, when the dope boys got locked up, it was all the young boys that were still out there. But the females who were dealing with those dudes didn't have anything else to go to except for those young boys. And a lot of those young boys were knocking up these older women, and the women couldn't get any child support out of them because they were underage.
Yeah. The brother Tommy Curry talked about this. I've heard some of the interviews he did on a couple of the channels on YouTube. I mean, he talked about this. I agree with everything he said in that regard. I agree with what you were just saying. Again, what we're seeing is that at every level of Black society. We're seeing how Black boys have been commoditized for whether it's their ability to sexually please a Black female, or you can provide some type of monetary benefit to them. And so we've seen this across the board. And just to to even go in the idea of even discussing the level of sexual abuse that Black males experience in their childhood, and even as they start to enter adulthood, this is blasphemy. The idea that women, and Black women in particular, can be sexual predators to their own sons in many respects. It's blasphemy.
Yeah. As much heat as R. Kelly is getting, notice no one ever talks about the fact that he was molested by his own sister.
Man, let me tell you something about this R. Kelly thing, because I don't know how the brothers on the panel feel, but I was in my very early teens when that videotape came out, and I know the McDonald's he used to go to and meet these girls at. I went there. I know the mansion he used to have in Lincoln Park, which is the most expensive neighborhood in Chicago. There was not a shortage of girls that watched that video and still would not have got in the bed with that man.
Oh, I believe it.
I have personally known females that saw the video. They wanted him even more after they saw what he did.
Listen, when I was a junior in high school when that first video came out of R. Kelly, and it was a big talk in my high school, about the video, because at that time that's when you had Kazaa, that P2P site Kazaa, and so many people downloaded it in their computers and watched it. And in school, there was so many female students who would claim how they would just voluntarily sleep with R. Kelly, not caring if they're minor or not. It was like, so age is nothing but a number. They didn't care. They didn't care. So I'm not trying to say that R. Kelly's an angel and he's right what he did, but let's keep it real. A lot of these young females don't care. They will voluntarily go and sleep with guys like R. Kelly, knowing what they're doing and not give a damn. But when they're exposed, by the public, then they want to play victim because they want to be known as a little whore.
I want to make sure we focus not on what R. Kelly did, but what the topic is tonight.
Oh, most definitely respect. Most definitely.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, let me just read this. Let me just read this excerpt real quick. This one is from the Atlanta Black Star. Foxfire sent this. Shout out to Foxfire. 6 reasons why Black boys without disability wind up in special education. Expand this out real quick. Researchers have found that the 9th grade is crucial for Black boys, shaping their future odds of graduating from high school. Of the 4.1 million 9th graders in the U.S., about 258,000 of them are Black males. Among them, about 23,000 are receiving special education services. More than 37,000 are enrolled in honor classes. And for nearly 46,000, a healthcare professional or school official has told them that they have at least one disability. If they follow the current pattern, about half of them will not graduate with their current ninth grade class, and about 20% will reach the age of 25 without obtaining a high school diploma or GED. Many Black boys who end up in special education do not have a disability. Rather, they have circumstances that spur behavior patterns that are not compatible with the school environment, according to researcher Ivory Tolton. This behavior usually can be corrected by changing something about their surroundings. Researchers divide students into 5 categories: a true negative, children who do not have a disability and have never been diagnosed; a true positive, children who have a disability and have been accurately diagnosed; a false negative, children who have somebody needs to mute their mic. I think that might be MOT. false negative, children who have a disability but have never been diagnosed. A false positive, children who do not have a disability but have been diagnosed with one, or have a specific disability and are diagnosed with the wrong one. Oh, this is pretty long, but I think you guys should actually read it. It's actually pretty decent. I've read this before. Interesting perspective, because the GED, which is something I dropped out of school and got myself. I think Boston Public Schools were the worst. You were better off just not going to school at all. But I think GED should be offered at that level when you hit ninth grade. I think because there's a lot of fluff that is put into to the academy that doesn't allow for a lot of those black boys to actually benefit. So if we can create a better launching pad for them, then that will probably get better results. But there seems to be a vested interest in keeping them in a cyclical loop of failure in these arenas, and it's unfortunate that people are telling people are telling these boys to go out and get a job at 18 when you have automation coming in. I mean, what do they think was going to happen?
I agree with that, because the problem is that again, there are just so many things. There are just all levels of this system is designed to impede the progress of black boys. So from cradle to grave, when it comes to the GED exam, I'm not sure if brothers know, but they changed it back in I want to say early 2000s. They changed it, like they changed the GED. So yeah, so it went to being pretty straightforward to more of a difficult exam.
It's based off of the SAT.
Yeah, yeah, and the interesting thing about it was that if you scored at a certain level within the GED, they actually offered you scholarships. You could get scholarships and stuff like that for college and stuff stuff like that. And I really wish that they would offer it, for the simple fact that I think for the average black male, you don't get nothing out of going to high school these days. I mean, certainly in all honesty, I don't think you get nothing out of it going to elementary school. Because
yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, just some of the skills that I remember when I was in elementary school. You learned how to read and spell through phonetics. I'm seeing kids now, they don't learn none of that. They don't learn any of that. They can barely pronounce a word, or they can't they can't spell a word or put it in its proper syntax or context, because simply they just have no idea what phonetics is. And so,
I mean, you got.
Go ahead, bro. Sorry.
No, I'm seeing dudes out there spelling of instead of OF. They're spelling it OV.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is just one of these things where phonetics greatly enhances your ability to read, and not even just read, but being able to identify words that you may not know. Again, they talk about how the vocabulary section on the ACT is biased, and there's certainly some racism in that, and without a doubt, there's certainly racism and bias within those standardized exams. But again, the fact that we have mumble rappers that exist is proof positive of the fact that we don't even black males aren't even learning the basics of how to function within the 21st century.
We have to go back to the fundamentals. My great grandfather, he was a minister, and all that, and we came out, and we had a big farm, and we never shared croppers or anything. He had always owned property, and he had in his church, he used what was called the blue back speller. And me and my brother, we just purchased two of them about 3 weeks ago. And the book was written in 1824. And it gets into phonetic spelling. And this is what basically took you out of slavery into literacy. And it taught you how to read properly, and had you to break down words like Constantinople and so forth. Break stuff down like that. We got to get back to that. The Blueback Speller, written in 1824. This is a book that every damn near school, a black school, should have today. Every young black boy should be
Who wrote that?
Should be reading that. It's called The Blueback Speller. Just take a look at it.
Who wrote it though?
I have to go upstairs and take a look at it. I don't have the book in front of me right now. But,
well, if it's a white man, then you can't be showing reverence to him.
Huh? Say what? Anyway, I think it comes back to us getting back to fundamentals, and I think it's really all this complexity is it's that simple, literally. I mean that book is still relevant today as it was damn near 200 years ago, and
I also think that there's room for discussion about creating a social equity program to actually address this very issue through a GED and a vocational certificate such as robotics and autonomous vehicle design and things of that nature. All these fourth industrialized opportunities that's going to come down the pike. I think there may be an opportunity to create a social equity program around that. I mean, it probably wouldn't cost us anything since the GED is already paid for by the government for the most part, and it's just about adding on, a nano degree program with it that's going to actually be beneficial in the long run. Instead of sending them off to some D1 school and draining their wallets and draining their future. And putting a basketball in their hand and saying, you can be just like old boy over there. Then you end up like Carmelo Anthony, just a has been.
Pretty much.
I would say Latrell Sprewell.
Oh, wow.
That's a sad story.
Yeah.
Or Vin Baker working at Starbucks, and Delonte West working at Home Depot.
What about the one brother that was doing the working at he's working at one of those investment banks now doing financial education for athletes. The brother was an athlete, Antoine something. I can't remember the brother.
Antoine Walker.
Yeah. And I mean, this brother lost like over $100 million in lifetime earnings. I mean, it's sad.
Great. Yeah. Hey, peace to the panel, man. What's going on, everybody?
Same to you.
What's going on, brother?
All right. Hey, man, I like to speak to this a little bit. I spent several years when I was younger in college working at a recreation center. And, I would see a lot of the stuff that's already being discussed with a lot of younger boys, man, specifically younger black boys. A lot of parents will come in and they say, hey, they're recommending my kid, be on Ritalin, or they're recommending my kid has ADHD, or they're recommending my kid go to special education, and they be asking me or my coworkers like, what do you guys think about that? How's this learning here? How's things? And in pretty much all of those cases, it just was a situation where, they didn't necessarily have much male influence or structure at home, and they just needed a little patience and work, We actually saved a lot of black boys from going down that route, So this really this conversation really resonates with me that you guys are having here. And I've experienced some of that abuse and viewing a lot of that in high school also, in middle school myself when I was growing up. So I've seen a lot of that also in Detroit public schools going through that system. But I digress. And with this whole thing with teachers claiming that students have ADD, it's like, when I hear so much cases of the same thing going on with especially male students, black male students being accused of having ADD, in the back of my mind, I ask myself this question: maybe that child is just not interested in the curriculum. Maybe just a lack of interest, or maybe just a lack of interest on the way the teacher's teaching the students, because different teachers have maybe different systems on how they teach the curriculum. Maybe the system is not helping the child be more engaging or be more interested in the curriculum. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's a lack of interest. How could it just be this quote unquote attention deficit disorder, in which to me, it seems like to me it seems impossible for a person to be deficient of paying attention.
Wacky world, you hit it right in the head. The less commitment they have to your kids, the more ADD you have. And okay, the top schools that are teaching black kids do not have this. Don't have this issue. That's what I'm saying. We have to take that out of their hands. That is our only answer. I know we can sit here and run this 101 different ways. We got to take it out of their hands. That's what we got to do. We will come to this conclusion at some point in time in the future. We will come to that.
I agree, Nicole. Correct.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, again, it's pretty subjective. You need the diagnosis only for the purposes of being able to medicate. That's where it's at. It's not really the diagnosis for the sake of just saying your child has this. No, for your FYI. No, it's the diagnosis with the intention of medicating. And the moment that a parent attempts to stop that medicating, once you sign those papers and agree to this individual educational plan, you can lose parental rights. You can be stripped of it, and your child can be placed into foster care.
And I'm sure they don't make that clear to these parents.
It's not even appearance, brother. Let's just keep it 100 here, man. These are the mothers. The mothers are the ones that are facilitating this. Again, we know that most black males are being born to single mothers. So the bulk of this is coming down on the mothers. And again, I know some folks might feel some kind of way about Umar Johnson, but he does speak a lot of truth when he talks about these issues. I've done clinical rotations in schools, and I'm telling you, this is what happens. I'm in the state that incarcerates the most black men in the country. They come out of one damn zip code. And this is what happens. And I've gone into these schools. I've gone into some of these alternative schools. I've talked to some of these kids. And, as much as I don't get me wrong, I really want to see black boys. But some of these kids, they're just too far gone. They have too many psychosocial issues that I can truly address. I don't have enough time to deal with. But, however, the responsibility, I do have to say a lot of this responsibility does have to start to fall on a lot of these brothers that are having children with broken women.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Very good point. Well, Dr. Phoenix, my question to you is this, based on what you just said. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, a mother agreed to put her son, to have her son take Ritalin, right? She agrees that she acknowledged that her son got ADD. She agrees to put her son on Ritalin. But then she doesn't want her son to be a Ritalin no more, but she has, just hypothetically speaking, she has proof that her son is performing excellent in school to the point that he doesn't need Ritalin. Is there any possible way
you have to go through some type of litigation process to get that done. Typically, you will need lawyers to get involved because, again, the moment she stops that, the school system can say child endangerment. So now we can strip you of your parental rights, and now your child can become a ward of the state.
Now let me see. Let's just say
it's not just this subjective diagnosis of ADHD coupled with throwing a child into education. Again, once that child gets thrown into special education, the school district gets extra money. Now, you go to any of these school districts where you have a sizable black male population in these school districts, and you'll see that most of these black males are most likely within the special education system, and these schools are getting anywhere.
Hey, Dr. Phoenix,
man,
you can't.
You're boring real bad.
Yeah, log off and log back on.
Okay, it's a money grab. If you take these kids out of the special education system, I guess it means less money to these schools, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And isn't that sad that human beings are being sacrificed for the love of the good old dollar? That's sad.
It ain't the first time. It
won't be the last.
It won't be the last.
Yeah, now just able to see all the way to the end. So this is why I say you got to really protect yourself and who you have kids by, because if you don't, quote unquote, care, you're actually throwing your kid, lighting them on fire, and throwing them right into this damn system. That's pretty much what you're doing.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
you know, I think the cost. I think the cost is like 1/3 more, right? So I think they're getting $120 per student versus like the $80 or $75 that they get for the non-sped student, right? Non-special education student. So there's an incentive to actually fill up and meet a quota um, to gain that to gain those state and federal dollars that they so demand. Because if what happens here, if they don't have enough enrollment every single year, then what happens is they don't get the money the next time around. The next fiscal year around when they go back and they do the numbers. So there's an incentive to keep running them in there as much as possible, man. And some of those places are like they're like jails, man. My brother's a teacher, and he talks about that a lot. You got 14-year-old girls coming to school pregnant, and 15-year-old boys with already fathers already. And 14 years old still in the 6th grade and stuff like that, 7th grade. It's absurd.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Again, again, this is this is what happens when you turn a particular group of males into living commodities. I mean, again, black males, whether it's your talent, whether this system finds some way to monetarily capitalize off of what black males can do, whether it's we'll just diagnose you and stick you into a special education system where we collecting $5,000, $10,000 off of each child in a special education system again. And it's clear that the money that goes to these school districts, that goes to the school system from having all these black males in the system, is not even benefiting the school districts upon which these boys are in. Again, it's not just these you think about some of these more wealthier school districts, they're getting most of their money not from the fact that they're located in upper income areas, but because you have so many black males that are just being put into special education.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so it's not it's not just the tax dollars, but it's just the fact that you're literally turning black boys into cash crops. That's what's happening.
So
And you see that, but you see it politically speaking as well with Black Lives Matter and the death of black men as is being used to catapult some women into politics or some people into politics for that matter. I got this strange feeling that sometimes when these people see me, it's like I can't wait till you die.
that's pretty much.
So I can get into office. Hurry up and die, nigga.
But I mean, didn't we just see this with Jordan Russell Davis's mother in Georgia? She was running off the memory of her dad's son that she says is a damn gun law. She refuses to acknowledge the fact, no, your son was just killed by a damn white supremacist.
Well, look at in St. Louis. Look at in St. Louis with the not Tamir Rice.
Michael Brown.
Mike Brown's mother ran for office.
Yeah, she also pledged to Delta. She's a damn Delta.
And Sandra Bland. I think Sandra Bland's mother also tried to run.
Yeah. Yeah, and at first she was talking about it's white supremacy this, then she got a little bogus $3 million payout, and then all of a sudden it's it's gun laws. Never mind the fact you saw your daughter get pulled over for a bogus traffic stop. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden she magically ends up dead a few hours later.
Was Trayvon Martin's mother had went out and tried to do some things as well, man. Which is it's very interesting, man, to see all this stuff play out, man. Not just from the academic perspective, but from the political perspective. You also see an incentive to to continuously drive black males into this sort of warehouse, that we call the prison system.
What's tragic about that, brother? I tell you what's tragic. When you look at Jordan Russell Davis's mother, Sabrina Fulton, I think that was Trayvon Martin's mother, and Mike Brown's mother. They all had men that were very active and present in their lives, and they never once talked about those brothers, not one time.
No,
They
look at Hillary Clinton had them all on stage. Remember?
Yeah.
During her campaign, they had them all on stage, and you would never think that these dudes had fathers at all.
Goes against the narrative for the strong black female.
Oh, but if we talk about that, it's because you were lame. You can't get no women. Can't get no punani.
Yeah, you a hater. Yeah.
Misogyny.
You're a
Yeah, you're an incel. Yep.
You're gay.
Oh man.
You're a lame dude. Yep.
Which woman hurts you? Which woman hurts you?
Who rejected you? Who rejected you? Stay in your lane. That's what you need to do. Stay in your lane.
You're not an alpha male. You're a beta male.
You're a dusty beta male.
No, maybe you're a sigma. You're a sigma.
I did have a question because I've heard the brother MOT speak on other panels before, and he talked about a number of the initiatives that he did working with both older and younger black males. I just like to hear a little bit more about that because I know he talked about some of these things and stuff like that. I just want to hear more about his experience doing that, if he's still available.
It's MOT's birthday, so he's definitely celebrating right now, yo.
Okay.
Happy birthday to MOT, man.
Oh,
happy birthday, MOT.
Yeah. Happy birthday, brother.
Happy birthday, bro.
Speaking of MOT, I think a brother like that should be one of the biggest people on YouTube, based on the knowledge that he have, the experience they have, and the things that he have, and the things that he can further contribute to black society.
The sad part is I've heard the brother MOT on other panels. Again, this is when I first started really listening to the black YouTube sector. And I mean, this brother be the only brother actually talking some sense, and you got fools on here attacking this brother wholesale. And it's been pretty damn consistent when I've seen him come on panels where he gets attacked by at least one or two, as he call them, reptiles. So again, I think this comes down to the fact that does the opinion or does the knowledge that a black man have, no matter what level of the spectrum he falls on, does it really even matter in black society? Because again,
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Because the end goal is to exalt the women so she can keep abusing the hell out of these boys. And if they actually cared about men at all, because they stop evolving once they get access to sex. They're done with manhood at that point. They don't really care about nothing else. So if you're talking about pulling boys out of the system, you're actually talking about giving boys a better and a different life than they had. And they ain't trying to hear that. And most women who are actually raising these boys ain't trying to hear that either. So by me actually talking and actually being in the position that I'm at, everybody's looking around like, how did one of these get created? I thought we had the perfect system in place so that this wouldn't happen. Whose black mother did this? That's what it is. Whenever you look at this, they want to look at it as, how did this happen? Who's responsible for this? This is an anathema to our actual program that we're doing. And that's what it is. I've come to the actual conclusion that we're done. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I would agree with that, brother. I mean, I the crap that we see that goes on, whether it's in black YouTube or just out here in real life, I mean, we see it. Generally at the center of it are the women and the dudes who spend their lives chasing them. That's essentially what it is. Whether it's these, if you want to call them pro-blacks or whatever you want to call them, again, it is typically, I mean, we've seen this consistently, whether it's the stories you've heard brothers talk about on YouTube or things we've seen in our life. What happens? It is the women who know that these boys that they help create dysfunctional boys, and not only do they help it, they encourage it. And these boys grow into their teens and into their manhood, continuing the dysfunction, continuing the barbarism and the savagery, and it gets wholesale encouraged by women at all levels for the most part.
Because they're weaponizing his masculinity for what it is, the physical aspect. You know, I'll get my brother, I'll get my uncle, I'll get somebody to do something to you on my behalf. Hired gun, blackmail, and I encourage his promiscuity as a barometer to where his masculinity should be at. So that's why you hear in the manosphere, you know, you're mad because you ain't getting none. Anybody who speaks out against, you know, the abnormalities of black YouTube,
matriarchal supremacy, the whole supremacy of matriarchal supremacy. That's what you have to term. You have to use.
So this goes to show you that Willie Lynch still exists. You know, a lot of people who, a lot of naysayers who speak about Willie Lynch, they state that, you know, there was no actual person in history named Willie Lynch living in the Caribbean, which is true, but the indoctrination is real. So you just because there's no proof that there was some slave holder in the Caribbean named actual Willie Lynch, but the conditioning, what you see in Black America today is an example of how Willie Lynch, as far as just the conditioning, is real. And a lot of people don't understand when they speak when it comes to Willie Lynch. It was really about how mothers condition Black boys. That's what it was about. You know, a lot of pro-blacks, you know, trying to take this broad spectrum, how talk about, you know, conditioning a lot of slaves. No, it's literally how mothers control and condition Black boys to basically be unintelligent, strong individuals with a high sex drive. That's basically what the Willie Lynch letter was about in a nutshell. And when you see what's going on today, you see the end result of that Willie Lynch letter.
Well, and you also, you know, somebody in the chat just said, you know, the Black church should start having manhood classes and reading and writing Monday through Friday for Black boys. Well, you have to keep in mind that the two major institutions, the two pillars of the Black community that has this sort of political and religious power is the Black church, the Christian church, and the Democratic Party. And what you're starting to see since 2008 is a tectonic shift of Black males who can think for themselves, leaving the Democratic Party and going GOP or independent, and leaving the Black Christian Church and going to Islam or some other sect religion, or just becoming agnostic. Agnostic altogether. This is a big problem because you cannot rebuild a community if it's incohesive between the genders.
Well, just deficient of productive Black males. That's the problem. You cannot have a community that's built on dysfunction and female, you know, just female led. It has to be built on productive Black males. And again, that's what's happening, and that's why you hear these screams, these death knells. You hear the pro-blacks running around crying about gentrification. No, it just only became gentrification when the white folks came in and said, well, you guys done lived here for the last 40 years. You ain't did nothing with it. Let us do something with it.
That's it. And that's going on all over the country. And I would add that the Black church has done more damage to the Black family because it's enabled all this, excuse the language, all this fuckery. I mean, how can you say you teach God's word when your congregants and the pastors themselves violate that said word every day except Sunday, and sometimes on Sunday?
You know, it's funny you said that, brother, because I get regularly invited to speak in Black churches, and I would agree with that wholesale. It is my personal experience that the Black churches are the breaking point in Black society. We talk about the women being the breaking point, but it's the Black churches as well. And you can argue that many of these Black churches are, they might be, quote, have a male minister or reverend or whatever, but again, they do what's at the behest of the women.
Yeah,
They're just really the voice for the women.
yeah, that
I
pimp.
think an argument along those lines can be made.
It's a slaughterhouse for black males, and it's a no place. It's not a safe place for them. So you see a lot of brothers, even you see a lot of women getting dropped off to church by the very dudes who don't go to church.
I grew up a Muslim, brother, so I've never subscribed to the Christian faith. I grew up a Muslim, so that just is what it is for me. But I come from a family where these folks were Southern Baptists. They got baptized at 12 and 13 years old, and my aunt, my mother's second oldest sister, she had all her kids baptized young, and you know what? Every single one of them were teenage parents. All 5 of her kids, all of them ended up teenage.
Oh, damn.
It's a high degree of success rate. Just not the kind you want.
Yeah, I mean, 100% effective.
But don't worry. If you had just a little bit more ass, you would not notice any of that. So take to a call you in the morning, man.
Dr. Phoenix, you brought up an interesting point when you stated how a lot of black boys have been sexually abused. Because growing up, I've heard stories of, a lot of my black male friends, when we sit down and have guy talk. And it's funny how I've heard numerous stories how these black male friends of mine, when they state, the first female they ever had, and they always tell me how they was maybe 12 or 13 years old, losing their virginity to a female in her 20s.
And I'm like, brother, I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and when you brought up that point, it just had me go to like a whole bunch of flashbacks of tons of my black male friends telling me these things, and I would tell them each time, do you know that you were sexually abused by a pedophile? If you were 12 years old and the first person you ever had was 22, that person was a pedophile. And when I would tell them that, their minds would clear up. They're like, you know what? That's a good point. And so it's so messed up that even a lot of us as black males who's probably been abused, whichever way, I mean, we've been so used to this abuse to the point that we never knew that it was abuse until someone else had to clear it up for us and tell us that.
That's an important point to bring up, brother, is that you have this normalization of the abuse of black boys wholesale across the spectrum, whether it's the mental and emotional abuse that young black boys have to face, or it's the sexual abuse that young black boys have to face. There's this normalcy to it. And it never gets talked about. And the moment that it gets talked about, and again, if you listen to any of the interviews that the brother Tommy Curry did, he talked about how he's been attacked wholesale when he talks about this. He said, yeah, women will come up and deflect and talk about, young black girls getting molested and sexually assaulted. But he said, well, what about these black women that are molesting and sexually assaulting these black boys? And then it's just like crickets. No one cares. And again, this is something that happens so frequently within black society that it is completely normalized. And the idea of talking about it is heresy. It's complete heresy.
Yeah, what can we do to shine more light and bring more attention to that issue, though?
I mean, part of it is that one, there's not enough of us talking about this. I mean, outside of hangouts like this,
Right.
how many discussions like this that are really happening at this level. I mean, again, I've heard brothers over on some of the more well-known folks in the Black manosphere talk about this. Brothers that are that I've seen do interviews, and they talked about how they got sexually how they were molested by their mother's childhood friend, and when they brought the issue to their mother, the mother did nothing. She laughed it off as if oh, it's just normal. It's growing up. You're a boy. You're a man. It made you a better man. And we don't understand that this is a breaking point. I think a good argument can be made that most Black males, their first sexual experience is probably with an older woman. I think a very good point. I think a very good argument can be made.
D.L. Hughley talked about this last year. That he was like 12 years old and he was getting his world rocked by some older woman. He thought that was just normal, smell my finger, that type of deal. In the 90s, that was pretty common too. For me, seeing a lot of dudes growing up, man, because back then we didn't have cell phones. You had pagers. And the thing is, if you're in middle school, how did you get that pager? Because you ain't got no job. You ain't selling drugs. Who you get that pager from? Where you get them new Air Force Ones from? Your mom is broke, right? So we know where that was coming from.
All right. I'm going to propose something that hasn't been proposed almost anywhere. Because what I've seen here when it comes to the sexual experiences of Black boys, Black teenagers, Black men, is that either they get exposed to it by grown women, which, yeah, it is child abuse, it is pedophilia, or there's a gap where you have those individuals, young boys who experience sex way too early, or grown Black men who experience sex way too late. And we've seen how a lot of these Black men, Black males, act when they have sex too late. Some of them want to cloud it under, just rage or whatever, or just calling out certain entities. But in reality, it's just a lack of sexual gratification and desire. And I'm going to propose something that's going to resolve this. I won't say it will resolve this issue, but I think it is a solution nonetheless. And that we need to face the fact that sex is a natural function. It is almost as a necessity as eating, drinking, and taking a dump. All right. I hate to say it in this language, but as far as that's concerned, a lot of the world realizes that, except the United States, whether Eastern countries, Western countries, other non-American Western countries, etc. Look at how lenient they are when it comes to prostitution. Look at how certain cultures set up their sons with daughters when they're young. And what I propose in order to solve this issue, a solution, is one, to have us as a society, whether it's the Black community or America as a whole, come to the realization that sex is a necessity and that your son and, yes, your daughter are going to have sex. Two, if you want them to have it responsibly, you need to be involved in who their partners are. So in a way, I would either the arrangement, not necessarily by forcing some girl or guy to have sex with each other, but arrange social scenarios and like a teenage version of play dates in a sense, so that you can get the kind of boys and girls together that you wouldn't mind your son or daughter getting with, and then simultaneously teaching them safe methods of sex, condoms, contraceptives, whatever. Responsible sex, consent, all that kind of stuff. Teach the teenagers what you look for when it comes to a male, who you should date or should have sex with, the kind of man who's responsible or boy who has potential or whatever. And when it comes to guys, it'll teach them, hey, girls like a guy who's physical, who works out, who keeps his body right. You don't have to be ripped up, but moderately in shape, have a decent personality. Don't come off whatever. And teaching those physical and social needs that individuals, all of us, desire, and bringing that together in a healthy social environment, which will allow teenagers, I'd say between the ages of 15 and 15, 16, 17, to meet up together, to form social circles, date amongst those circles, have sex amongst those circles, but in a responsible way would solve a lot of these issues of men either or girls and boys either getting sexually abused when they're super young, or mainly men whining about how they didn't get enough and that they're using social media as some sort of outlet. And I think honestly, this would resolve a good amount of those sprees that we've been seeing in high school.
How would that resolve children being sexually abused by adults?
Yeah, good question. I'll be honest. I think a lot of that, with the responsible teaching of sexual responsibility, I think throughout the generation, we emphasize that there is a limit to who you're romantic with. And as a result, we would instill our teenagers not to go after younger kids or teenagers when they're adults. That will be one of the things that will be emphasized in this controlled environment. I get your point. As far as controlling sexual abuse when it comes to children, that is an issue that needs to be taken care of. And as far as that's concerned, I would say we should have more of an equitable system where we go after female predators as hard as we do male predators. I'm definitely in favor of that.
And Xanderso's clutch. I think that society already have these teenage circles where teenage males and females could mingle or communicate with each other. We call that high school. We call that the school dance and the proms and stuff like that. Yeah, that's what goes on in high school, right?
Yeah, but it's determined by the parents, or it's determined by some sort of arbitrary social norm that says, hey, if you don't have enough coolness or swag, then you aren't worthy of sex. No, that's bullshit. High school social circles are just as good as the K-12 education system, and we see how much of a wreck that is. So I think there should be much more involvement on a parental level or a group of parents, instead of just sending them to the school and saying, oh, whatever happens, happens. Whoever they get along with, whoever they find attractive, then so be it. No, that's just.
But Zanzo, how do you know every single parent is doing that? How do you know if every single parent is not teaching their kids as of currently how to be responsible sexually and different STDs they could get and different contraception? I mean, parents are doing that. I understand there's not enough that's doing that, but there are parents who's doing that. I mean, but ultimately, Xantos Cluster, with all due respect, your whole point, I think, is irrelevant to what we was talking about, because we're not saying that we're not. I don't think anyone in this panel is saying anything bad about sex per se. What we're speaking about is children being victims of adults who want to do whatever filthy sexual act to these children. And we're saying that Black males as children are victims of this, and a lot of people in society is not talking about that. So we're not speaking bad about sex per se, but we're talking about how children are being being put in situations where they're being sexually abused by adults. That I cannot stand for.
And absolutely nobody, including myself, can stand for that. And if you want me to give a solution to that, then I would say punish the females as harsh as we do the males.
That's never going to happen unless you have a campaign, right? So the reason why this can happen is because there's a lack of visibility. You have single-parent households. You have a multitude of issues as to why Black males are so vulnerable, right? So the question is, how do you reduce Black male vulnerability? There has to be more eyes on that. I mean, I think back in maybe the 70s, 80s, there was a common practice amongst Black men where they, some noble brother would step in and be the stepfather and whatnot, and then actually play that role and create that visibility. You don't really have that anymore because a lot of those brothers were exploited. A lot of those brothers got got dumped to the side or got taken to court, got taken to the cleaners, even for kids that weren't biologically theirs. So how we treat black male masculinity is part of the issue as well. If we don't respect black masculinity in its purest form, then what happens here is we don't see any value in protecting it. And now, that's one of the reasons why we had the hangout last week about manufacturing masculinity. And you see that in the manosphere right now. You see a lot of guys beating on their chests, claiming to be tough, all this other stuff, kind of wearing their masculinity in cosmetics, right? The $5 do rags and all that stuff. That type of stuff is fugazi. That's what we say up north, man. It's fugazi, and it's not real. It's not authentic. And what you have is the brother who can de-escalate a situation, the brother who's reserved and passive, he's being seen as a sucker, whereas the guy who will never who won't stand for anything but will fall for anything, right? That guy, he's being honored. He gets more attention from women. He gets a lot of female subscribers. They're praising those guys, but they're not over here talking about this, because this is not sexy. It's not glamorous, because it's hard for them to actually accept that the ball was dropped under your watch.
And not to mention they don't like their authority challenged. And when their authority is challenged, they have to face the fact that to again, excuse my language, that they fucked up, and they fucked up royally. And and going back to what you were saying about manufactured masculinity, that goes back to when you don't have self-definition. And one of the things I remember in my days in the FOI, we were big on defining yourself as a man, not so much in terms of just being in that organization, but you being able to function and take care of yourself, provide for yourself and a family, being able to master yourself in your situation. And I think when that focus is taken away and it's purposely destroyed, we see the results of that playing out in the streets of America. And we have to go back to that. And we have to go back to that, damn what the women want, what anybody else wants, because it's what we want and what we need. And we have to proceed on that basis.
Yeah, but the whole system is based on what women want, not what's okay for the child or anything else. And that's kind of the top of the pyramid here. It's what the woman wants. And what
not for me.
No. I'm just talking about the current system that we're trying to change. Not us, obviously. But it's you pour at the top, and it's all still going to come down to forming a family, so that way you can dodge this inevitable system that we see that's in front of us that destroys men. And
I agree. I understand that. But you know what else I found too? It's time we have to redefine what we consider family. Because when we consider family, we always look at our blood relatives. But I found that my blood relatives aren't necessarily my family, because they don't necessarily want what's best for me. And I think family is those who want the best for you because they want the best for themselves. So
yeah, I've redefined family as those who are willing to follow my lead. I don't care who they are or what they look like. These people have voided contract on what normal family is in a black structure. Most of these people you can't even form a family with, and most of these people you don't want to seek brotherhood with. So, since they void both of those contracts, you have to come up with a new contract that works for you. I found one that works for me, that keeps me safe and my interests safe. It's just that black men have to operate in their own self-interest and not give a damn about what nobody think about. Period.
Correct.
That's it's actually a good segue. Before we close out at 12 o'clock. One of the other things I wanted to bring up because Xanatos's Clutch is on, and he's probably seen some of this stuff in the DMV. The hazing aspect of black males, right? Preteen, even teenage, right? I gotta jump you in order to see where your manhood is. So we beat the innocence out of some of these young black boys in order to make them cannon fodder. And I see this a lot, even on YouTube. I see like a lot of these YouTube phone clips and stuff like that. You know, I saw one the other day. Black boy got jumped. You know, I think he had special needs or something like that, man. And these dudes are savage, man. They just went to work on him, man. Nobody protected this black boy, man. He took a lot of the licks, but you know, no one spoke up for him. You know, they just kind of just beat him like he was like he didn't have any sort of humanity at all. They didn't have any humanity for him. And I wonder, like, who speaks up for this guy?
Just start locking up principals, man. Like we didn't allow that on military installations. If your son or daughter was a bully, we came straight up to your place and we took stripes off your arms. That's how that worked. Or else your kid had to not go to DOD schools and he had to go through a normal school where he can be a red pal in peace. Now, we just didn't allow that type of stuff on military installations. And we allow this type of abuse, because that's what it's called, to go on unchecked. And somehow this person is supposed to turn 18 years old and not see violence as an answer. When he's seeing violence as an answer all through grade, middle, and high school. Now, all of a sudden, once you turn 18, you're not supposed to see violence as an answer to anything. Like, I don't get that. No.
Anybody else have any opinions on how do you protect the boys from the unnecessary hazing, especially the ones who are considered to be special needs in school but get jumped and whatnot?
I mean, it has to be a culture of responsibility. That's the only thing that can save them from that. But most people think that that stuff's okay. So it's kind of a cultural thing.
I think that parents, maybe I'm just being idealistic, but I think that parents need to be more active in suing, the public school system. If these hazing situations is going on in the public school system, they need to be more active in suing these schools, the public school system in these local areas. And when enough people do that, of course, that's going to put pressure in these schools to put stricter stipulations when it comes to bullying, and abuse and what have you. And also teaching your child self-defense and bring them self-defense classes so they can know how to, beat a bully's behind won't hurt either.
Now, here's some. All right, so with that, and hopefully we can agree to this. Protect the right of defense in schools. If you have someone who's bullying you and you kick their ass as a defense mechanism, you should not be punished at all. At all. As a matter of fact, the bully should be punished even if he gets his ass kicked. I don't see how anyone can argue against that point.
You're seeing this stuff in the manosphere. You're seeing this stuff in the manosphere. You're seeing certain guys go around to different hangouts and terrorize other black males, even as adults. It's very weird that people actually encourage that and then talk about building the black community all in the same breath. How can you be black first if you're going around terrorizing people? It doesn't make any sense. The very same people you're terrorizing. But I don't ever see those same guys going over to Stormfront or any of these other right wing organizational groups. I don't see them going over there and pulling that over there. It's only with black males that they seem to think that it's justified that this should happen. Go ahead.
They're too afraid to do so. They're too damn afraid because they know who their overlords are. They know who are the mouth that feeds them. Well, Stormfront probably likes those kind of Negroes more than thinking black men because it pushes the narrative. I mean,
I'm surprised to see so many women in the manosphere actually subscribe to these guys and encouraging it.
well, they're all part
They
of
love
the same team. They're all in it. It's all a ruse. It's a damn scam. It's a pyramid scheme. It's basically a pyramid scheme in which, hey, well, you know what? Yeah, you got a bunch of alt-righters who wouldn't get any peace if they're outside this country, even if they're in any other white country, pushing the narrative that certain men aren't about crap, and then they enlisted this daggle, this female, in order to enforce it by raising men who aren't crap, and then those men who aren't crap, especially those who fall for the hook, line, and sinker of being either simps or thugs, basically are the muscle. It's all a well-oiled machine in order to make us look bad. Because if we had the masculinity that we had, say, back in the 80s and the early 90s without the hood crap, oh man, we would be the most sympathetic group of men on the planet. Two, we would have other countries giving us reparations, like how the Jews did, well, America and other countries outside Germany did with the Jews. And three, sexually, we would be almost unstoppable. Honestly, the sexual market thing. I mean, we wouldn't have this. We would have this need of game and approaching and going to the club every Friday and Saturday night, wasting our time, acting like a bunch of idiots and acting like we like it. I mean, I'm not. Who likes wasting their time, spending all this money just to get a chance? I mean, no. Other races have guaranteed nookie on deck. That's how they do business, and that's how they're able to take care of business because they don't have to worry about this simple stuff. That's the reason why they don't have to simp as much. That's the reason why they can be innovative. That's the reason why they're advancing. It's because they don't have to worry about the simple bull crap in life.
Complex Design, you still there?
Yeah, he's still here.
I think he might have stepped away. Man, the original Old Man. You have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. To answer your question, as far as how come certain people within the manosphere can go and antagonize different black male content creators, but they won't go to people like, you know, members of Stormfront or members of that channel Red Ice or any other right wing / white nationalist content creators, is because the answer is simple. They're cowards. That's all. They're cowards. They claim to be black first, but then they're out here trying to, you know, bully other blacks online. I mean, how could you claim to be black first, but yeah, you're abusing the same people, but you're not proven to put black first by going out and challenging certain white supremacists who's talking about eliminating so-called black people. That's cowardly. That's being a coward. As being a one, they're just reverting back to being this wannabe thug from back 30 years ago, but doing it on the internet. And you know, a lot of these wannabe thugs in real life, they're cowards because they'll be quick to be aggressive at another so-called black person, but then when one Caucasian cop could come and kill plenty of children in your communities, you're just out here holding a damn camera phone. Talking about Black Lives Matter. Where's that same aggression that you have for your own brother? That's the same cowardice that these fake B1 individuals are showing. And the females are loving it because you have to realize that you guys already do realize that females love drama, and the so-called black manosphere has become the black male version of love and hip hop. Okay, and females love and hip hop. So you bring a black male version of love and hip hop, females going to love it also.
And to add on to that with the cowardice is the reason why a majority of these Negroes act like Pookies and Rarities in the first place. You see, society doesn't care if you're fulfilling the stereotype that they want you to be. Yeah, you may have some hicks on the internet calling you words or whatever, or some other disgruntled incel trolls in their basement somewhere. But overall, they're comfortable with you being that. They're comfortable with you being the stereotype. It's when you're not the stereotype that you really get that target on your head by the individuals who really have it in for blacks. And a lot of these Negroes, they won't tell you this, but they know that. They honestly know that if they were to come off as intellectual or just non-stereotypical, that they would be more of a threat than they would be being stereotyped. So in order to be under the radar of the so-called white supremacists that they think or they claim that they're going after, they fulfill the stereotype of the white supremacists. I mean, that's why I look at anyone who has some hood swag to them with the side eye. It's like you're cowards, you're punks, you're pussies because you want to put on this Pookie and Ray Ray persona. And yeah, you say, oh, I was just raised with it. Oh, bullshit. I was raised in it. But I realized I saw the forest. I saw it way beyond the forest and saw this for what it is. And that's part of the reason why I am how I am right now is because you know what? Oh, you want me to be like this? I'm going to act as opposite as possible. Partially just to piss you all off and to make you all look like the dumbasses you all really are.
So I'm sharing this video right now because I think it's pertinent to what we're discussing of the vulnerable black male. When you have these savages who are mounting on top of this brother, and they have no sort of consideration for this brother's humanity. And yet he's called a punk because he cannot beat 12 people at a time. And those guys considered heroes. And yet, this is what we have to deal with here.
You know what, Mike V, I haven't seen the video, but just putting the picture inside of my head based on what you said, that's why I think at times I'm sort of thankful that I don't have children right now, because if I were to have a son right now, a teenage son, and I saw a video of a whole bunch of punks jumping on top of my son, I'm going to prison.
Me too.
I'm going to prison. I'm going to prison.
School did nothing about it. I mean, nah.
Especially if the school done nothing about it, I'm going to prison. You're going to see my face on the evening news and go like, dang, I didn't know old man had it in him. I mean, I just cannot stand to have a child and just watch
That's
my child. Say that again. Say that again.
Yeah, somebody laughed. That's not no laughing manner. That's some seriousness right there.
Oh no, that's me laughing because I sort of do that. I have a bad habit of just making a little laugh after I make a point. My bad.
Man, but I mean, what was that supposed to resolve? That action that they were taking in the video, like what? What? I mean, they're not in jail. None of them.
No. And this is why we need to practice our Second Amendment. I think every brother on here should have his Utah license. If you already have one.
Sure.
It's a Utah license.
Yeah, I'm working on getting mine now.
Yeah, that wouldn't have happened to me. Although I would probably not have, because in Massachusetts we can only have 10 rounds in the mag, but somebody would have got popped.
All you had to do was pull it out, man. Them dudes lose all that hood swag in a heartbeat once they feel like they see some verified consequences. Reptiles tend to turn back into mammals whenever you give them consequences or even show it to them. But there's no reason for that person to go through that. There's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't see the 7 or 8 photos of these people being locked up in juvie over what happened there.
But
And
this is what
somehow
the
you as a
manosphere
parent
looks
have
like.
to take it. Yeah, I mean, but you know,
This is what the manosphere looks like. You get one decent brother who makes a point and goes against the narrative, and this is exactly what happens on panels.
And this is what people pay the most for to see.
Oh yeah, super chats and Patreons and
yeah.
Streamlabs and all that stuff goes on.
And then they don't know, and then they want to know why black people aren't taken seriously. That's insane.
You know, when you take, you know, the dialogue away from things like the societal mistreatment of black men, like what we're talking about is the societal mistreatment of black men. So when you take away exactly when you take away these sort of substantial topics and just stick to dating and sex, you're just gonna attract all types of savages, because that's what well, I'll say savages, but I meant to use another word. Savages. You attract all types of savages because savages think on that level, just sex, dating. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with sex and dating. I mean, everything has a time and place. But when you just strictly just speak about that and you're not elevating the conversation to something more substantial, something more intelligent, you just stick to that, to just that. And when they speak of sex and dating, they speak of sex and dating on a very base level. So when you concentrate most of your content at such a base level, you're going to attract people with a base level mindset. And when you do that, that's what you have. Because people with the base mindset, they're going to behave in a base way. And this is what you see.
All right, so we got 10 minutes to be closed out. Go ahead, MOT, and then we'll give our closing statements on a campaign similar to Black Girls Code or Black Girls Rock. How would that look out? How would that look if you had an opportunity to create a campaign?
A campaign? Wow. I mean, I'm not even sure what it would be. Because you have to center the program around saving the government money, because they like that. But I don't see any other way out of it other than just leaving most, if not all, of these problematic people alone who have this sort of mind state. Like, you ask them a couple questions, and if they seem matriarchal or want to even carry on this specific platform that's currently in place, don't talk to them, don't look at them, don't look in their direction, probably buy the food stamps, but that's about it. And done. Don't even deal.
Anybody else?
What I would focus on is these 4 areas: finance, agriculture, cultural rebuilding, and technology. And I would have a program. I would have a program for it has to be black male only initially. And you have to focus on re-educating black males in those 4 areas, either concurrently or, whatever suits their talents, because these are the areas that we can see the most immediate growth in. And start it on a local level, then maybe on a state level, and if time and opportunity allows, on a national level. And you have to have a vetting process for each individual who gets involved. So that's an ongoing, train of thought that I have. But those are the 4 areas I would focus on, though.
Yeah, well, I guess we can start off like the government contracting would just have black male only contracts. We could just bid on them. I mean, because because there's way too many things for just black women versus nothing jack for black men. I mean, I was just looking at the Mississippi database, and there's not a damn thing in there for black men. There's tons of stuff for black women or other quote-unquote minorities, which is equal white women, but there's nothing specifically singled out for black men specifically. That's why I'm working on my veteran certification, because it's easier to get that versus it's just that we have to have black male related stuff. We have to have a black male related homeland.
Yeah, that's sorry.
You know what? On a political level, I already know that minorities and so-called black people and other minorities, they're considered as a protected class. But if black males are able to come together and prove, statistically speaking, through the level of homicides that they face, through high school dropout rates and what have you, and etc. And you prove that black males in particular should be a separate protected class based upon the disadvantages that they face, then when you're able to prove, if we're able to go and prove that and have Congress agree on that, then I think that state, federal, and local governments can and will bring more funding and more programs our way to help young black boys if we can go to, I guess, the country's capital and prove how black males in particular should be a separate protected class. What do you guys think about that? This is just an idea I'm throwing out. So
never gonna happen in this country.
You're better off going to the UN with that.
Do you guys think that that's a good idea, though? I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
But the women, but you have to understand it. If you don't have a level of participation in a system that's already in place, you're never going to get something out of it. And especially when you have one half of the gender line and 80 to 90% of the male gender line who don't want to see black men progress, period, that's going to make it even doubly hard to get this stuff rolling, because they don't want to see black men on their feet, being able to be self-sufficient. This is why they have this kind of social control of sexual repression, so that way they can force you through humiliation and shame and other and everything else, so that way you can follow their rules to get their quote-unquote good. That's what we have here. It's a system that makes you submit to them or face social annihilation among the race of people that they want you to be a part of when it's convenient for them. So that's the kind of system that you have in place here. And when you have much people who are doing or voting against their own best interest, if they're going to vote or even side with people who's going to want to separate the actual men who power their system away from them, that's a lot that you're asking. No.
That's a good point.
All right. Anybody else have a? Go ahead, Complex.
I was just gonna say, with the you have to define and develop a fourth industrial mindset. I think it's kind of, I think it's more than just like surface level changes. I think there's like a fundamental frame of mind that I think actually needs to take place. Change in that that has to take place in order to really see something that is going to then have some sort of reverberating effect, into the future. So I think literally pivoting towards being a subgroup of a group of people who are like largely STEM based, right? So STEM based in just our thought processes, how we see STEM to apply a solution to a problem. All of these things, I think we just need a re-terraforming And we can start at various levels. Obviously, with the kids, Mike, you've always spoke about putting the maker labs and the fab labs and the maker spaces, in the community, getting that type of stuff instituted. There's a lot of things that can actually kickstart this type of stuff, but it takes like a serious approach to it. And it really has. They're really got to learn also to develop if you have an agenda, if you have an agenda that you value, like if there's something that like an end game or goal that you're trying to achieve, then really you don't let other people like take you off of that to in root of that. You don't allow them to like remove you from the square. It really doesn't matter like who it is. So in terms of like sisters and all that, I said you got to have an agenda for you, and you have to really just look at anyone, whether it be a sister or brother, white, Asian, whoever. Okay, if they're going to be an obstacle, they're just going to be an obstacle. We really shouldn't like split hairs as to the who and the what's. It's just the mere fact that they're gonna just show themselves to be an obstacle regardless. So we should begin to also develop an indifference to a lot of this. Not everything that someone brings to you and says is an issue is actually an issue, right? We have to start making a determination on what is actually worthy of our time and attention, because your time and attention should be spent to doing things, to produce things to enrich you. So if you're not doing that, then that means you're going to redirect your time and attention to something else. It better damn well be important. Like, don't come to me with no bullshit. And that's the type of, I think, really, again, just the mindset. I'm not trying to tell people how to think, but how it's been going, it hasn't been working out too good. So, just offering up a different take there.
I was hoping that somebody would come up with a clever hashtag to push the narrative.
I saw somebody said black males build or black boys build. Like
yeah.
I saw that in the chat.
Black boys code.
That's pretty similar to what's already established. Right? I thought there would be a clever hashtag that would have.
Give me a little bit. I can come up with something.
Yeah, we'll revisit that. Yeah, we'll revisit that, man.
One thing I would add.
Go ahead, Xantos. Go ahead.
One thing I would add is that for whatever program is built on behalf of Black boys, I would have them at some point see what the results of that would be. Because half of the reason why kids in general don't give a damn about school is because they do not see what the results of that could be. They don't, or at the very least, if they do see it, it's on TV. They're told by other individuals, but they're still in the same usual piece of crap community at the end of the day. You have to take these kids, or we have to take these kids out to certain environments, whether it's in places that are upscale or places that are more racially integrated, that actually takes the time and difference to see the difference between blacks and savages or babies, kids, pookies, whatever you want to call them. And I would include taking them outside the country to see what you can get if you decide to stick it out and work your butt off. Besides the cultural aspects and different perspectives, getting the different feel of lifestyles, that sort of thing, that's cool too when it comes to travel. But the reason why I also emphasize travel is Black boys need to see that the narrative that they are being fed about how the world hates you and they hate Black men and nobody wants to date Black men, and that's half the reason why a lot of these kids become lost anyway. It's because they see, oh, why should I do this? The world's going to hate me anyway. I'm just going to fight every day in my life. Fight. And then you have a lot of these pro acts talking about, man, I wouldn't have it any other way. I love fighting. No, stop lying to yourself. Nobody, no human wants to fight forever. Humans eventually want to have a bit of heaven before they die, a bit of rest before they get old. And if we show Black boys certain places in the country or the world where they can find that, given that they stick on the path of building and being producers, that will be a big incentive for them to continue it on the path, regardless of what societal or local assistance they get.
DE, you have anything you want to say before we close out to this? A hashtag, a campaign for Black boys. I think DE stepped away. Paul Bryant or Rodney, which one you guys want to go?
I guess build Black boys would be better than Black boys build. I don't know.
Give me some time to think that out. Because the only thing
All right,
I
you
have.
can always send an email.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, we'll bring you back onto the panel the next open chat, and you can reveal what your hashtag will be.
Oh, sure, no problem.
The hashtag not your slave.
How about, well, first off, personally, I don't use hashtags. I would just say Black men create, think and create. But as I said 1,000 times, bro, it starts and ends with mindset. Everything is mental because mental is supreme. You have the power within you to create the reality that you want to see. You have to change mindsets. If you do not change mindsets, nothing will change. Everything begins and ends right there. It has to start there. That is your foundation. When you build a high rise, you start at the foundation. Without that, you have you have a house of cards waiting for a gust of air to tear it all down. So that's all I have right now.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you have not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so that you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those from the community tab. We'll be back tomorrow for geopolitics. Also, shout out to MOT. Happy birthday to him, and shout out to Foxfire for and welcome back. He's been gone for a year.